2. What you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt kicker. The future is feeling.
It's another North American circuit in store for our GR86 Cup tonight, but this time it's one that's known on a little bit more of the club side of racing, Summit Point. This West Virginia mainstay may look simple from above, but slight elevation changes, tricky cornering combinations, and a narrow track surface mean our drivers will have to put everything on the line, and it will have their hands full tonight. Hello everyone and welcome to the PRL Monday Night Series brought to you here live on RaceSpotTV. First up, as we said, the GR86 Series. My name is DJ Clark, joined here in the commentary booth by Andy McEwen with our director and producer Hugo Louise behind the scenes. And Andy, this track, this course feels a little bit like a perfect combination.
I think so. I think we're in for an entertaining night of action from our GR86s here. A really challenging circuit, deceptively tricky actually. You look at a map of this track, you wouldn't necessarily think that it would contain the sort of challenge that it does, but it's a really tricky one to get right and a tricky place at which to overtake. I think we'll see very close racing, but those who are willing to take a few more risks than the rest might well be the ones who find themselves at the front.
I couldn't agree more with that. We're going to have to see how those drivers fare around this circuit. But before we do, let's go ahead and run you through the schedule. We are indeed on round 4. And after this, we take a little bit of a jaunt overseas, headed to Fuji and Tsukuba. Then, before heading over to Germany for Oschersleben, we head over to the UK for Alton Park International, then Road America, and we end the season at Rudskogen. A fantastic schedule there that has a little bit of everything and a little bit of something for everyone. We also have the points standings here that we'd like to be able to run you through here tonight. Justin Ataconis continues to lead, stretching that gap a little bit up at the top of the field over Mariano Barrios, but Kevin Sandiego tied with Barrios there for second place. It's really a 3-driver breakaway, though, as Aaron Law sits a good chunk of points back, but Patrick Farrell trying to be able to close in on them. Michael Chase sits there in 6th with 68 points. Jonathan Dam only a point off of him, and they are in a very close battle with Andrew Sharp and Jerron Farewell, who sits only 6 points off, and then Richard Swindells rounds out your top 10 in the driver's standings. We also have a teams championship, and they're one of the stalwarts in the series. Dark Horse Esports starting to pull away at the front of the field. Red Tip Factory Racing Team sits in 3rd with YS Motorsports rounding out your podium positions. From there, it's Unlimited Slip, then Walking Pace Racing, URF Motorsports, Crikey Esports, and there's a little bit of a battle going on there, but Moonlight Speed, Lunatic Racing, they sit in 8th place, with Precision Racing Esports not too far off of them, and RSH Motorsports rounding out your top 10 here today. And that's going to get a little bit of the business taken care of, but we've got a few more people to thank before we can get into the qualifying action. First and foremost, VCO, the virtual competition organization, who, with in partnership with the Precision Racing League, presents series almost every night of the week. So a massive, massive thank you to VCO. We'd also like to thank Advanced Sim Racing. Owned and operated by passionate sim racers, Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminum profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members get a 5% discount on all ASR products by using the Precision5 coupon code. Also, thanks to Racebox Sim Racing. Racebox offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, their button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and get a 5% discount using the Precision5 coupon code. Thanks as well to RaceLab apps. RaceLab helps you to improve your driving skills. With modern overlays, race statistics, and native VR integration, you can get the best out of iRacing. Start using it now for free at racelab.app. Thanks as well to the Butt Kicker. Butt Kicker products provide an incredible immersion and realism to every game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself in the driver's seat with Butt Kicker. Also, Mecha Sim Hardware is a small company from the Czech Republic, and their goal is to produce high-quality sim racing hardware. If you are looking for high-end pedal sets, a handbrake, or sequential shifter, visit Mecha Sim Hardware's eShop right now and get yourself up to speed. And finally, we'd like to thank NinjaTrader. Ready to compete against the financial markets? Supporting over 60,000 users across the globe, NinjaTrader provides award-winning trading software and brokerage services. NinjaTrader is always free to use for advanced charting, backtesting, and trade simulation. Visit ninjatrader.com to get started with a risk-free trading simulator and start tracking your performance. Well, Andy, with that taken care of, practice is also taken care of, and that means it's time to qualify. And new to this season and into this series, it is a solo qualifying, which means that draft that we were talking about certainly not going to have as much to play in, and it's really all down going to be driver skill here.
Yeah, and I kind of like that idea, actually. The draft and trying to get that quick lap and hook up with some other quick drivers, that's all fun and games, but actually this is what it's all about. Which driver, with a limited amount of laps, a limited amount of time, is capable of nailing that perfect qualifying lap? And it's going to be oh so important here. As we've said, not the easiest place to make progress, so you'll want to start near the front of the field. So far this season, though, obviously, DJ, it's been all about one man in these qualifying sessions, and I wonder whether or not our championship leader, or championship contender, I should say, can continue that pole streak.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Obviously, drivers just starting their first flying lap here. We ride on board with Mark Feil as he comes down through Turn 1. And Andy, as you said, very difficult to overtake around here. That Turn 1 area, probably your best chance to be able to get a move done. When you come up here through Wagon Bend, this is a very fast corner. And because of the way that the exit of the corner is with that sand trap on the outside, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to try to get anything done. And then, of course, here coming through the chute down into yard sale, it is very, very difficult to try to go too wide through there, but I've seen on a couple occasions drivers pull it off, but it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of skill to make it work.
It certainly does, and it's quite easy to defend into Turn 5, so really the only option is to try and go around the outside, get the inside for Turn 6, and then you're sort of relying on the other driver to leave you plenty of space. This is a fun part of the course, though, through 7, 8, and 9, down towards this really tricky sort of 90-degree right-hander, but taking it in 4th gear in these GR86s. Don't run too wide over that exit curve, and that is arguably the most important corner on the circuit. You have to exit that turn well to get the run down the straight on a qualifying lap. That's important in the race. Could be even more significant because, as you said, DJ, this here at Turn 1, really the best place to try and launch an attack.
Yeah, but the cambering there into the corner does make it a little bit more difficult. It is an on-camber corner, but it starts to break away. The track kind of crowns in the middle of the circuit, and so that will make it difficult. Matthew Wegenar there that we watched looks like he was unable to get a time down on the board, but Kevin Sandiego, Jonathan Dam, Mariano Barrios, Michael Chase, and Michael Lordy make up your top 5 here at this point. Still waiting for our championship leader, Justin Adakonis, and there he is up to nearly the top of the charts with a P2, only 84 thousandths of a second there off of Kevin Sandiego.
Yeah, 3 qualifying sessions so far this season, and on all 3 occasions, Justin Adakonis has been on the top at the end of the session, but has a bit of work to do here tonight to try and take one of his big championship rivals, Kevin Sandiego, away from pole position. Matthew Wagoner continuing to push along here, coming towards the end of the second sector. Runs a little bit wide, gets on the grass, and he's going to lose control and head for the trees. That is his qualifying session over, and that is a really easy mistake to make.
Yeah, it very much is. If you try to push a little bit too hard through that section of the track, it will come back to bite you down through the S's. We do check Rob Campbell right now, who also has yet to set a time down on the board. The driver of the 111 now working his way through the chute into yard sale. Heavy braking zone here off into the left-hander, and then bringing it around through the carousel. Such a corner here where you've got to have a lot of patience, Andy. It always seems like you want to get on the throttle a little bit earlier than you have to, but you need to have that patience. You need to wait to get on the loud pedal to be able to maximize the run here through the S's and down into this area of the track.
And that's the case at quite a few corners on this track, because a lot of them do have that little bit of positive camber. It sort of tempts you into carrying too much speed in and then picking that throttle up a bit too early as well. You've got to be patient around here. Corner exit, generally speaking, more important than corner entry speed, really. And yeah, patience is key through that middle sector in particular, where the track winds from the left to the right, to the left to the right again. Lots of tight corners, lots of corners around here that tighten up in a sort of second apex as well, and that adds to the challenge of what is, as I said, a deceptively tricky course.
Yeah, deceptively tricky, but well managed there for Rob Campbell, who gets himself up into 8th place. Marlon McMullen able to put his way up into 4th as well. So some good times still being put down on the board right now. Here is Pierre Robitaille in that present liveried car that we are so used to seeing him in, the number 67. Takes the final corner there. Not going to pick up an off track for that. You are able to run a little bit wider on the exit of the corner, so no problems there for Robitaille. He is going to cross over the line right now. Looks like that won't be an improvement. A 121.229 there for Robitaille. I do see Aaron Law putting a good time down on the board. That'll bump the 47 driver up into 19th place. And Matthew Wagoner finally gets a time on the board. That'll be 23rd for him.
It will. We're watching Marlon McMullen here coming through towards the end of his qualifying session as well, but looking good for Kevin Sandiego here, who's only had 1 front row start so far this season, so looking like he's going to not only take his 2nd front row start, but maybe that first pole position of the season so far. Really important part of the season this as well, heading into the mid stages of the championship, and those top 3, as you said, really starting to extend their margin at the front. McMullen comes across the line, stays in 4th position, but it's looking nice and tight inside that top 10.
Yeah, I mean, look at those gaps. You know, the biggest gap that we're seeing up in the top 10 is from Marlon McMullen to Justin Adakonis, and that is a 1/10.5. From there on out, we are talking about hundredths, if not thousandths, of a second separating these drivers. We are very, very narrow margins here as Austin Bartlett Chase jumps up into 10th, and Patrick Farrell jumps into, looks like what was 6th, now 7th, as Mariano Barrios is able to push his way up into 3rd place. Indeed, as we look down the order here, 1st and 23rd, only separated by a 10th, by a second. They're very, very impressive stuff from all of these drivers.
Other tracks of this sort of length, the Summit Point main circuit 2 miles in length, that would be the sort of normal situation you'd expect. But as we said, you cram an awful lot of corners into the 2 miles around here. You might expect to see a bit more separation than that, but they're staying very tight together indeed, and that bodes well for the race to come.
Yes, it certainly does, and I think we're going to see a very, very closely contested race as Aaron Law tries his luck there, really chucking the car around through Wagon Bend, seeing what he is able to do, almost losing the rear end of that number 47, but just barely keeping it up underneath him, as it looks like there that may have been an off-track excursion there counted for him, and he's actually going to park the car. That'll be his qualifying done. Matthew Wagoner, though, having no such problems. He's going to continue on here into the carousel, jumping onto the binders there, diamonding off the corner well. I can tell you that McMullen is in the pits, as well as Rob Campbell and Andrew Morin. I believe Kevin Sandiego, Adakonis, and Barrios are still out on track, but I think they've completed their 4 laps here at this point, so it's pretty much just keeping going and keeping that rhythm up around the circuit before the green flag flies.
And that's something I always found quite important, actually. If you finish your qualifying session early and then sit around for 5 minutes, you lose that rhythm completely. This is a real rhythm racetrack as well, so sensible in some ways to keep on pounding around there. Matthew Wagonar comes through and does a personal best. That's good enough for 13th, and that will knock Aaron Lahr down into 19th place. We saw him bailing on that lap. DJ, he is 4th in the points arriving here tonight. Not a good start to his evening so far.
No, not a good start for him. He's going to have to work his way forward here, and that's going to be especially tricky around Summit Point, but we could be counting on some misfortune from others up a little farther in the field. You never know. Looks like here the qualifying is just about finished up. I'm not seeing any drivers here that are still out on a hot lap, but again, plenty of drivers going out and just practicing here at this point. Really to the surprise of no one, though, it's San Diego, Ataconis, and Barrios up at the top of the charts. Then Marlon McMullen will line up in P4. Jonathan Dam will be 5th, followed by Michael Lordy in 6th. Dakota Tabler lining up to the inside of row 4 with Patrick Farrell to his outside. Then it's Michael Chase and Rob Campbell in row 5, followed by the other Chase, Austin Bartlett Chase, and Brian Soboleski in P12. Matthew Wagonar puts in a good performance to come home in 13th, followed by Andrew Morin with Andrew Sharp and Kwok Nin in 16th. Baron Glover lines up in 17th with Ian Cabana in 18th. 19th will be Aaron Lahr, 4th place in the championship. Aaron's going to have a lot to do here today. And Pierre Robitaille will be in P20. Brett Karakoff lines up in 21st with Mark Feil to his outside with Anthony Dring and Nathan Miller behind them. Malcolm Foster lines up 25th, followed by Richard Swindells. Sean Tetrak will be 27th with Raymond Day, Matthew Zagalin, and Sidney Dos Santos in 30th place. And that will round out our 30-car field. Short pace lap here around the circuit. It is a full pace lap. Probably not all that crucial to get the tires up to temperature. We're looking at about 78 degrees Fahrenheit ambient temperature, 80 degrees on the track right now. So those tires should come up to temperature relatively easily. But I think for all of these drivers, making sure the brakes are up to temperature is going to be the most crucial thing.
In the limited practice I've had in these relatively new to iRacing GR86s, that's the thing I find the hardest, the braking. They really handle a little bit strangely under braking. I think they have a tendency to squirm around a little bit, easy to overshoot the corner, get it completely wrong in that braking zone. So you're right, that's really important. They are, though, pretty stable compared to some other similar paced cars on iRacing on cold tyres. So tyre temperature, as you said, not such an issue, but for sure they'll be working those brakes as hard as they can, because the biggest braking point on the track is the very first one that they're going to hit. They're probably going to arrive down at turn 1, 2, and 3 wide, and you want to make sure that your Toyota is going to stop in time.
Yeah, you very much do. We've seen pile-ups happen down into that first corner many, many a time, and I think all of these drivers are going to be keen to avoid it, most notably the number 88 of Kevin San Diego, who he will be hoping will be leading when he gets onto the binders down into that corner. A long front straightaway here, especially for a club-style circuit like this, that does mean a little bit of drafting is going to come into play, but as we've talked about here, a little bit more aerodynamic effect in these GR86s as compared to the MX-5, so that also does mean through some of the fast sectors of the track, coming up through Wagon Bend, in through the chute, we could also be dealing with a little bit of aero wash, and that's something these drivers are going to have to watch out for.
For sure, and you don't have a lot of room to maneuver here. Pretty narrow track, really. So if you do find a little bit of understeer, if the car starts pushing through some of those quick corners, you need to realise that pretty quickly and lift off the throttle. They're pretty responsive to those sort of movements on and off the throttle. They will come back to you, but you've got to sort of realise that that's happening in time. And with a lot of these corners being quite long and often tightening towards the end, it can be tricky. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a few people perhaps just understeering off the track a little bit if they do start suffering with that dirty air.
And this corner in particular, coming up through Wagon Bend, is going to be the area that I'm going to be watching for that. We could pick up a little bit of understeer as they come up the hill there into that gravel pit on the outside, where you could see some drivers having some of those problems. But nice 2x2 formation here as the whole field, 30 cars. Love to see this many cars here joining into the grid and really being able to take part in everything as they work their way now down into yard sale. That is a colloquial term that I know it for, Andy, as because it is looks sometimes like a little bit of a yard yard sale out to the outside with many cars strewn out into that big grassy area.
It's certainly one of those sort of quirky little tracks that, had it not been for iRacing, actually, I don't think I'd have even been aware of existing. So, yeah, nice to know that it's got a bit of a following over there in the States. And, yeah, let's see what sort of racing it provides for us. As I said to you before we went on air, a track I've personally struggled with in my racing experience. I'm very much, though, looking forward to enjoying tonight's action from the safety and comfort of the commentary box.
You and me both. I do love driving this track. That doesn't mean I drive it well, necessarily. I will say that. As now drivers work their way down through Paddock Bend here, the final corner, and there you see the pace car scampering off down into pit lane, giving control of the field over to Kevin Sandiego, as Sandiego waits here, backing up the field. Will be on his go, as there goes the green, and we are racing here at Summit Point. It looks like a relatively decent getaway from Kevin Sandiego. Ataconis and Barrios trying to hold in behind. We're seeing good 2 wide down into the corner. We may want to see that try to filter itself down into one way, as there goes Sandiego moving his way to the outside, trying to protect that line. Barrios looking down to the inside there on your points leader of Justin Ataconis. No contact there, but a little bit of a push out wide potentially as they continue to work their way through. Looks like the rest of the field has been able to get through the first corner nice and clean.
But now 2 by 2 they go, and this is the trickiest part of the track to do that. The leaders get it sorted out single file, and that was really important to do. You can't really go through there door to door, especially on cold tyres. What a dream start this has been, though, for Kevin Sandiego. He cleared the rest of them into turn 1. He was able to take his preferred line into that first corner, and he'll now have his head down trying to break away. That's going to be a lot easier said than done, though, I reckon.
Yeah, much easier said than done here for him, as you're already starting to see a little bit of a breakaway from those Championship 3 over Marlon McMullen. The gap at about 0.5 of a second as they exit out of the S's. Great shot there by our director, Hugo Luis, as you see those cars just streaming their way on through. They now come over the rise here and down the chute into Paddock Bend. And let's see if anybody's able to time this up right. Looks like your top 3 starting to still pull away a little bit. I saw one of the cars in the back there. I think that may have been Jonathan Dam, getting a little bit wide on the exit of the corner, but it doesn't look like that's going to set up any massive overtaking. Robitaille also going a little bit wide. Here comes Ataconis. We've got a couple of cars around. That appears to be Nathan Miller and Malcolm Foster.
Oh, I was just about to make a mention of how clean that first lap had been. I was surprised that the relative lack of contact, really, through the first few corners, but towards the end of the lap, we have our first incident, and we might be about to have our first lead change. Side by side, they will go to turn 3, and Justin Ataconis on the inside line will take the place, but Kevin Sandiego did not make that easy for him.
No, he certainly did not, but Sandiego, what that has now caused is a bit of a stack up behind as Marlon McMullen Jr. trying to make a little bit of a move there on Mariano Barrios, going down into yard sale. Barrios able to rebuff him, and I had all but written off Marlon McMullen on that first lap, but he is clearly starting to push his way up forward right now and seeing what he is able to do. But now it looks like Barrios is going to be the one in the catbird seat, with Sandiego losing a little bit of time courtesy of that attack from Justin Ataconis.
That's typical of this kind of racing, isn't it? You get a bit of side-by-side action, it stacks the whole field up, and that is where things can get pretty dicey. Now, using a VR headset around a track like this, that really will be making this track feel a lot more like a roller coaster ride than it already is. And Cope Neve there, who is running in 15th place at the moment, getting a brilliant view of the car ahead. That's Brian Sabelski in 14th. Quick check, by the way, on Aaron Lahr, still 19th, so no places gained for him so far.
Yeah, he's staying where he is as we take a look there at the number 86 of NIN, trying to be able to see if there's a little bit of a move there on Soboleski. Not able to get it done. They're going to stay in single file order here at this point, and that really is the story up and down through the field. Looking again is the 86. Not going to see it start to fly out there, so they'll stay in single file order here up through Wagon Bend. Now as they work their way up towards yard sale, let's see if anybody else gets a little bit gutsy. We've seen some drivers try to take it too wide through that right-hander. Nobody able to do it, and a good battle coming from behind there as well as Andrew Morin. Looks like he's trying to be able to get a little bit of an attack here on Kwok Ninh.
Yeah, Moran running in 16th place then in these early stages, but this is kind of what we expected. Once you get things settling down after the action of the first few laps, you really have to pick them off when you can, and with everybody capable of running near identical lap times, really, making significant progress through the field is not that easy to do for Kevin Sandiego. Only one more position that he wants to gain, but actually losing a bit of touch now with Adakonis, who is starting to stretch his legs in front.
Yeah, Adakonis being able to pull out about a 0.3 of a second gap, but I have to say Mariano Barrios setting the fastest lap of the race last time around. Sandiego looking a little bit offensive, looking a little bit defensive there. One way or the other decided to move to the right-hand side of the track. That's going to compromise his corner exit, and Mariano Barrios knows it. He's going to try to look for it, but not able to get anything to play. He'll slot back into line. I think that may be a little bit of a defensive move, making sure that Marlon McMullen isn't going to be able to get anything as well. And now we're starting to see a little bit of a breakaway here for the top 8 or so, but the big breakaway is Justin Adakonis, who's now been able to build up that gap to about 0.9 of a second. Barrios thinking about a move down into the chute. That's not going to play.
No, not quite close enough there, but that really all started with Sandiego taking too much curb through the first corner. We saw the car hop up onto 2 wheels, and they don't really like that, these GR86s. It sacrificed him exit speed, and it meant that Adakonis, as you said, pulled this now 0.8 of a second cushion, which means that Sandiego is still within slipstreaming range, but he needs a near perfect second half of the lap to keep the leader in sight.
Yeah, he really and truly does here. He's still going to be getting the benefit of the slipstream down the long straightaway here, as it is about 0.6 of a second. Marlon McMullen holding in behind right now in that number 58 machine. He's getting the benefit of the slipstream from a couple of drivers in front of him. We've had a couple of drivers go off in the background there through Paddock Bend, but everyone keeping in single file order here down into turn 1. McMullen doing a good job. We take a look on board here with Andrew Sharp, the YS Motorsports driver, as he tries to get a move done on Matthew Wagonar. Both of these drivers have been able to find their way up in the order, getting past Brian Sebeleski before the drop of the green, or after the drop of the green flag. But Sharp not able to get that move done on Wagonar, and he'll have to stay in line for now.
Yeah, showed his nose to the inside there into Wagon Bend, just trying to distract Wagonar ahead of him, but absolutely no chance of that. Again, just peeks to the inside, not really committing to a move, just trying to create that flash of movement in the mirrors to try and put your opponent off their stride, but so far Matthew Wagonar not putting a foot wrong. He in turn, of course, is watching Austin Bartlett chase in 11th place, trying to find a way past him. It's nip and tuck in the pack, and this is the kind of racing that these drivers will be enjoying, bumper to bumper, and really intense racing here in the early stages.
Yeah, very intense stuff. And I want to bring the audience's attention here to something you were talking about a little bit earlier, Andy, and that is how these cars handle under braking. I was noticing as he came down onto the binders into the carousel just how much movement was being put into that wheel by Andrew Sharp, and that's really characteristic of this car all the way around. It's a very tough car to control under braking, as here we've got a little bit of side-by-side. Patrick Farrell trying to throw a move there on Jonathan Dam, and I think he's going to get it done. At least he's going to hold it here for the moment as they make their way towards Wagon Bend right now. That's going to be slotting back into line. Jonathan Dam, good move for Patrick Farrell.
Yeah, well executed that through the first couple of corners, and now looks as though Jonathan Dam under pressure from Rob Campbell as well. Now Rob Campbell sitting right on his rear bumper as they turn through this flat-out right-hander at turn 4, but they stay single file into the next turn, one of those big braking points that you mentioned. And yeah, these cars, they just do some very strange things under braking, heavy braking in particular, and if you're braking on a turn, as you sort of are into a few of these corners, that is really difficult to do. Trail braking in these cars is not an easy thing to do either, so a really unique challenge, and that's what we like to see on iRacing. New cars coming in, new challenges for the drivers, and it's interesting to see in the early stages of this season who's sort of wrapped their heads around it the quickest.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's one of the things that I was most looking forward to when the Precision Racing League announced that it was going to be the GR86 coming in, is whenever you have that new shiny toy, for lack of a better word, coming into a series, it's always interesting to see how well drivers adapt, as here comes a big move from Mariano Barrios down to the inside. Sandiego tried to shut the door, but Barrios not taking no for an answer, moved the 77 up into P2.
Yeah, and I think Mariano was signalling his intent there. He feels that he can go after Justin Adaconis. He could see that San Diego was sort of matching the pace of the race leader, but not able to close in. And in fact, San Diego might now lose third position because Marlon McMullen is alongside. He's on the outside line into turn 4. It's a brave person who will go around the outside there, but it might just work. And yes, move Marlon McMullen now into third place.
Wow, that was some impressive stuff there from the number 58 of Marlon McMullen to be able to make that work. And San Diego's woes aren't done yet, as Michael Lorty is now the one who may be looking to be able to get on by that 88 machine as they fly their way out of the S's and down onto this sort of back straightaway here before they come into Paddock Bend. San Diego, he's going to have to nail Paddock Bend here to make sure he's able to defend from Lorty from behind. Looks like that's a pretty good line, and indeed San Diego may actually be able to have a little bit of a buff here on Marlon McMullen. McMullen certainly thinks so. He goes defensive, making the whole line streak over to the right-hand side of the road.
What a brilliant sight that was. One car moves to the inside, the rest of them all follow, and Kevin San Diego charging around the outside, trying to get back into a podium position. Michael Lordy there keeping Dakota Tabler at bay as well, and they all settle back in single file on corner exit. But look at the way that within the space of less than a lap, Mariano Barrios has gained about 7/10 of a second on the race leader. They are nose to tail, and now really starting to break away from this almighty fight for third place.
Yeah, 1.4 seconds now, the gap between Barrios and McMullen. That is safe to say that it is a healthy gap here at this point. Farther back in the field, we continue to watch as Michael Lorty tries to be able to see what he can do. Dakota Tabler looked like he lost a little bit of time, but able to close back in nonetheless. It does look like Diego here is going to try to hold on. We ride on board with Patrick Farrell right now. This is the 8th place car. This is really the last of the super close runners here in this train as they work their way out of the S's.
Yeah, Patrick sitting 8th at the moment, 5th in the points, so looking to try and really get onto terms with those big three, if you like, in the championship so far. Adaconis, Barrios and San Diego, all of whom are running ahead of him, but Patrick carries good speed out of that final turn, getting a mega slipstream now from that whole train of cars ahead. And is anybody going to duck out of line into the braking zone? A couple of them thinking about it, but they will stay in the same positions for the time being.
We saw a little bit of a defensive move in front there from Justin Adaconis, I think, as he recognizes the pressure coming from behind from Mariano Barrios and felt the need to go defensive down into turn 1. So I think that's pretty indicative here of what he thinks is happening. But I will say the flip of that being is that gap that we were watching between Barrios and McMullen is now down to about 0.6 of a second. We're going to watch it right now. Is there you can see it here is Adaconis, and there you can see that number 17 all over the rear wing of Adaconis. This battle is on, and now McMullen is caught right up with them.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see whether McMullen brings the rest with him. He's only about half a second up on San Diego, who's about half a second up on Michael Lordy, so they're all sort of coming back to these leading two, and it tells me that this slipstream really is powerful, isn't it? Because it seems that whoever is out in front just not able to escape, even when it looked as though Adaconis was going to be able to break the toe. It's just not happened, and a couple of laps later they're all right back together, and once again we've got a real race on our hands.
We certainly do, as now it looks like to be that 3-car breakaway with Adaconis, Barrios, and McMullen up at the front of the field right now. Seeing them streak by the start-finish line right now. Still waiting here. Marlon McMullen actually setting the fastest lap of the race last time out. A little bit of a move farther back down in the field, but that's going to come to nothing as it looks like Barrios tries to be a little bit later on the binders, maybe trying to psych out Adaconis a little bit, but no mind there to the 318. He's going to continue to lead this race.
Further back, Patrick Farrell moving ahead of Jonathan Dam, just spotted that on the timing tower, so 7th place now for the number 19 car, but he's got just over a second now to try and close in on this group. The way that they're fighting, though, I think he might be able to do that. It really looks to me as though Mariano Barrios is about to try and set up for a real attack for the race lead. He can see the way that McMullen has caught him, he can see the way that McMullen has brought other challenges with him too, and Mariano would quite like to break into that race lead and see if he can do what no one else has done so far and pull away out in front.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, and I don't really think you're seeing a lot of fuel saving here out of any of these drivers necessarily. We'll have to talk to them after the race and see if that was a strategy that was employed, but I've been taking a look on board, and we're not seeing a lot of lifting and coasting going down into turn one. A little bit of a half-hearted look there for McMullen and for Barrios in turn as they came down through the final corner, as that was Ataconis, Barrios, and McMullen all running wide on the exit of Paddock Bend. Now as they get into the draft here down the long main straightaway, a little bit of a look, almost fanning out to 3 wide. Who's this going to be down into the braking zone? Ataconis, Barrios, McMullen. McMullen calls it off. Barrios does not. Barrios looks down to the inside there of Ataconis. Ataconis tries to carry speed there around the outside. It's going to be nip and tuck between Barrios and Ataconis as they charge their way up into Wagon Bend.
This is going to be tricky. Something has to give. Someone has to back out of it. And in the end, it's Barrios who sensibly settles back in behind Ataconis, takes the wide line in, tries to carry the speed out. He's weaving this way and that, trying to find an opening. But somehow, Ataconis fending him off. Up over the curb goes the race leader. Slightly different line taken by McMullen there in third. But it is just so difficult to find that gap. They're all so evenly matched. It will take a really bold attack to try and make a move. I thought Barrios was going to do it actually into turn one. He was so late on the brakes, but not quite late enough.
I thought he was too. I thought for sure that was going to be able to work out for him, but clearly it did not. And I'm starting to wonder here if we may see some drivers opting to come down into pit lane maybe a little bit early, maybe a little bit late, to see if they are going to be able to jump the rest of the field in so doing. But right now it looks like none of the leaders are going to come in. We are inching our way closer and closer to the halfway point in this race. Barrios right now sitting about, let's call it 28 hundredths of a second off of your leader. Another little bit of a look into the inside there for McMullen. I don't think that was a real move, but farther behind, Michael Lordy taking a big look on the inside there. That's not going to play out. Dakota Tabler also having a little bit of a look as well. A lot of darting to the inside here, Andy, but nobody really committing to the move. I think, again, that just goes to that point, trying to force a driver or two into an error, and that being the best way to get on by.
Yeah, you want to try and be a distraction to the driver ahead, because anything that takes their mind off the braking point, off the turning point, off what the car ahead of them is doing, might just be the thing that allows you to sneak up the inside. And it's always quite comical to see them doing that weaving around into the braking zones, especially in these cars that do move around a lot anyway, and a couple of them perhaps flirting with disaster with some of those sudden movements into the braking zone. Just calming down ever so slightly in this group as they do now start to look towards this all-important middle phase of the race. And let's see who decides to blink first. I think they're definitely holding each other up a little bit here, and that might tempt a few of them down pit road.
Well, it certainly tempted Marlon McMullen, who comes down into pit lane. That is going to be the first taker in the entire field here, I believe, as the number 58 brings his way down into the pit stall. A very narrow pit lane here, not a lot of markings to be able to get right, but he finds his pit box, and he will make his way back out. A little bit of a poke to the inside there, coming from behind. I believe that was Patrick Farrell trying to see if he was able to get anything on Dakota Tabler, but Tabler able to rebuff that attack here. Well, that's going to separate out the front of the field just a little bit. We say a little bit. It's literally going to separate them out to 0.5 of a second. But Kevin Sandiego now going to find himself in position where he may be able to move ahead here and try to see if he can get anything on his old sparring partners of Barrios and Ataconis.
Certainly closed up to the leading two pretty quickly, didn't he, once McMullen dived for the pit lane. Don't know how I feel about this early pit stop here, though. I know that they're holding each other up a little bit at the front of the pack, but at least if you're in this train, you're running with drivers of a similar pace to you. If you pit and you come out in slower traffic, there's a good chance you'll lose more time. It's not going to be the work of a moment to get past those slower cars, especially when you're fighting for position around here. So unless you do happen to rejoin in some nice clean air, that might not be the winning strategy. I'm prepared to be proven wrong, DJ. That may well happen in the next 15 minutes or so.
Well, it looks like here that Marlon McMullen has had exactly what you described happen to him. He found himself coming out behind Mark Feil and Raymond Day, and that is certainly slowing down the former second-place driver. But here comes the move from Barrios. Great run there off of Paddock Bend. He'll be side by side with Justin Ataconis, having a nose ahead into the braking zone here into turn one. Barrios looks like he's finally got the move done, and indeed he does. Able to move that car up into the top position. Ataconis looking here for a little bit of a fight back, but that was about as textbook as you could get going down into the first corner.
Yeah, it's perhaps telling that Barrios was able to make that move only a lap after McMullen had pitted. He wasn't really under any pressure from San Diego. That meant he could focus all of his attention on making the overtake on Justin Adaconis, and make the overtake he did. He's into the lead of the race. Big lunge up the inside from Kevin San Diego, as once again these top 3 drivers in the championship find themselves battling at the front of the field, as we've seen so many times already this season.
And I thought for sure that was going to be contact with San Diego and Adaconis, but clearly I had been proven wrong there as San Diego was able to get that number 88 slowed down in enough time. They now work their way out of the S's. We watch eagerly to see if any other drivers are going to come on down into pit lane. I think I heard Zagalin saying that he may be coming down to this lap. Looks like none of the leaders are going to opt to do that. Oh, big run wide there for Barrios, actually kicking up a little bit of gravel on the outside of the corner and getting the car a little bit sideways. Is that the opportunity here that Adaconis needs to fight back? Clearly Barrios thinks so. He goes defensive. Adaconis thinks about it. Now San Diego going to look around the outside. Barrios going to cut off the attack there from San Diego. There Noah's Ark down into the corner. That may have been contact with Michael Lordy and Kevin San Diego, but Adaconis is going to have a nose ahead as they come out of turn 1.
Side by side once again for the race lead, and this time on the inside line. I think that Barrios will get it back. There's a squeeze on the way into the corner, and Adaconis is out wide, almost through the gravel trap. This could cost him second to San Diego. This is fantastic racing here at Summit Point. We've got 15.5 minutes of this to go, and we're going to have another change for second as Kevin San Diego suddenly buys back into the fight for the win.
Absolutely fantastic stuff there from San Diego, and look who's been able to creep in on the back of this picture. That is Dakota Tabler, up 3 positions in the number 79 machine, doing a fantastic job to be able to hold on to the back of this battle right now as Adaconis tries to hold on right here. Remember, that is your championship points leader, and I wonder if that aggressiveness from Barrios means that he may be wanting to come down into pit lane. It's not going to be Barrios, but I'll tell you who it's going to be. It's going to be Justin Adaconis who decides to come on in.
And on the previous lap, by the way, Marlon McMullen was matching the leaders, so he's found some clean air, and as they continue to fight, he could still be in with a chance of taking the lead here. So the second of our front runners heading for the pit lane. The fighting, though, DJ, is just as intense wherever you look up the order. This is the great thing about this form of racing. It's not just the drivers at the front who get to have some fun. Wherever you are in the pack, there's someone for you to race with, probably multiple people for you to race with, and that's what we're seeing here.
Yeah, it is indeed what we're seeing here as we watch 2 stalwarts in the Precision Racing League here of Rob Campbell and Austin Bartlett Chase in a little bit of a battle. Matthew Wegenar and Aaron Law not too far behind them as well. This is the battle right now for P8 in the category right now. That should shuffle out to about, I think, P10 once we take into account the pit stops that have occurred a little bit farther up in the field. But right now, as they work their way through the corner, we check back in on your leader, Mariano Barrios, leading over Kevin San Diego and Dakota Tabler. Pharrell and Jonathan Dam round out your top 5. There is a little bit of a gap starting to form between Dam and Lorty at about 0.5 of a second, but that's not too much, and that's certainly not enough to discount any of them. Looks like neither one of your leaders decides to dive down into pit lane here, and indeed the top 5, 6, 7 or so not going to come on into the pits. Looks like they're going to try to run these fuel tanks dry.
No complaints from me. I'm enjoying this fight at the front, and I don't really want the pit stops to separate them because they continue to run nose to tail into this first corner. Mariano Barrios, though, just maybe starting to pull a few car lengths. Dakota Tabler with a look at the inside of Kevin San Diego, but no way through there. It does seem, doesn't it, that Barrios is perhaps the most comfortable leader that we've seen so far. Not in terms of the size of his lead, but he's not really looking defensive at all. Doesn't feel the need to cover the inside line into that first turn. Kevin San Diego staying close, but not really applying as much pressure as we might have expected. And so Mariano Barrios quite happy to stay out, stay in the lead, and continue to try and run a really quick pace from the front.
Yeah, we haven't seen any sort of moves from that number 17 as we watch here. Dakota Tabler holding on to P3 quite well. He's got a little bit of an attack coming from behind from Patrick Farrell right now, but we'll have to see how that plays out as they work their way down through the S's. 22.5 minutes done, about 12.5 minutes left to go here in this GR86 race from Summit Point live here on RaceSpotTV. Let's wait to see if any of these drivers opt to come down into pit lane. It looks like Barrios is going to be the one to bite. He is going to come down into the pits. I think Michael Lorty also committing to come on into pit lane as well. Relatively fast pit lane here. You don't really have to get on the binders too heavy, and so there we will see the 77 come in. And now the real question is going to be is where is he going to come out in relation to the likes of Ataconis?
Yeah, that will be interesting. Marlon McMullen, by the way, back in the pits again and might be out of the race. So I think after that early pit stop, he has found himself in some trouble and might be out of the race altogether. But Justin Ataconis, you can see his name moving up the timing tower, and it looks as though that slightly earlier pit stop for him is not going to work out. Barrios, I think, is out on track ahead of him. So whilst we continue to watch the fight amongst those who haven't yet stopped, it is Mariano Barrios who keeps an advantage over Justin Ataconis, and they're just towards the back of the top 10 now.
Yeah, they was 0.4 of a second faster was Barrios in pit lane, and that has grown out to about a 1.5 second advantage up for him. Dakota Tabler right now trying to hold on to everything that he has got. We watch the number 19. There's a little bit of side-by-side farther back in the field. This is Austin Bartlett Chase, and I believe Michael Lorty trying to see what they are able to do going down into the left-hander. Oh, Lorty shutting the door on Austin Bartlett Chase. That was about as close can be, and I think Chase here may have a little bit of a response to him. He's going to look this way. Nope, he's not going to make anything as they go through the chute, and they will stay in single file order.
And into the pit lane comes everybody. San Diego, Tabler, Farrell, Dam, Michael Chase, all of the front runners in. Aaron Larlock had moved into 6th position before he pitted, so he opted to stay out a bit later than the rest. Kokneen, therefore, will take the lead. He's yet to stop, but this, DJ, could be the most significant moment of the race. A lot of cars about to rejoin the track from pit road.
Yes, they are. As there you see Kevin San Diego getting up to speed. He will be out ahead of Barrios, but the question is Barrios' momentum going to carry him on? And it's going to do exactly that. San Diego slots himself in between Mariano Barrios and Justin Ataconis, but crucially here, it looks like Ataconis able to send a little bit of a move, and he's going to get around San Diego before they go into turn 1, so that did not work out as well for Kevin San Diego, especially considering the gap between Barrios and Ataconis continues to sit in 1.8 seconds.
Yeah, which is just about on the limit of the slipstream, isn't it? So there is a danger here that Ataconis and San Diego could have lost touch with the race leader. There is the race leader, actually. We've got 2 cars yet to stop. Kokneen and Baron Glover both staying out there. And so on board with the number 86 driver as he continues to wrestle his GR86 around the Summit Point main circuit. I expect him and Baron in before too much longer. And then it will once more be car 17 out in front.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him come on down into pit lane right now, and just like a mind reader, the number 86 is going to bring that car into the pits. Let's see if Baron Glover does likewise. He is fading down to the right-hand side of the track. I think that is going to be the perfect indicator that he will come on into pit lane, and that's exactly what he decides to do, giving the field back over to the control here of Mariano Barrios. The gap has come down a little bit. It's down to about 1.1, 1.2 seconds for Ataconis. Ataconis now on the radio, I think, a little bit with Kevin San Diego, plotting and strategizing their way to try to get back up and close in on your leader, but they're going to be side by side coming down into the first corner, and San Diego able to get on by. The gap now between himself and Barrios down to under a second.
Well, Ataconis may have been asking for some assistance from Kevin San Diego, but Kevin wasn't in the helpful mood there, was he? Went up the inside, took 2nd place, but now I think they will probably work together to try and close in the gap. Already coming down to a 2nd, as you said. As long as they don't fight each other too hard, I think they could catch the race leader again. In turn, perhaps pull away from Dakota Tabler and Patrick Farrell, who find themselves fighting for 4th position as well. One of the big winners out of all of this is Aaron Lar as well, DJ, up into 8th place now. Not bad from 19th on the grid.
Not bad at all, and that'll certainly keep him involved in the championship conversation. Remember, he came into this race in 4th place, and now he'll be able to find himself getting a good heaping of points to be able to walk away from this one here at this point. But we focus in with only about 8 minutes to go in this race from Summit Point, West Virginia, as drivers work their way out of the final corner. Kevin San Diego taking every inch of the track that he can, and look at that, Andy. He's already been able to grow about a 3.5 of a second advantage over Justin Ataconis, and Mariano Barrios certainly starting to feel the pressure here, weaving a little bit down that main straightaway.
San Diego looked a bit like he was just hanging on in the first part of the race, but perhaps saving his tyres a little bit maybe for the second half. Certainly now that he needs the pace, he seems to have found it and is definitely bridging that gap to the race leader. So he will catch Barrios, of that there's not much doubt. He's probably going to bring Adaconis with him, and they'll have, what, 6 minutes or so to settle this out in front. It's going to be a dogfight for this 4th win of the season.
Yeah, it most certainly will, as now they plunge their way into the chute. This, the real breakaway here. The top 5, the pit stops have separated Patrick Farrell from Jonathan Dam here at this point. Dam finds himself about 5 seconds behind all of them. So the top 5 here, really the ones that we have to keep our eye on, as it is Barrios, San Diego, Adaconis, Tabler, and Farrell, as now they come down into the S's, working their way through the corners. Not seeing too much of a gain here from Kevin San Diego. It's still about 6/7 of a second here between the 17 and the number 88, but I think with everybody that he's pulling along with him, everyone's going to be hoping that Kevin San Diego is able to make a good run, and that's certainly going to help Mariano Barrios going a little bit wide there on the exit of Paddock Bend. That could slow him down a little bit, and indeed that gap coming down under 0.5 of a second as they get up to speed on this long main straightaway.
Yeah, that small mistake coupled with the slipstream down the pit straight means that Kevin San Diego is almost within touching distance of the race leader now, with 6 minutes remaining in this 4th round of the championship. Further back, Michael Chase moves ahead of Jonathan Dam, or does he? They're side by side through turn 1, and Jonathan Dam will stay in 6th position. They are sort of in a world of their own now. You said that they dropped a lot of time to the leading 5. They're also about 3 seconds ahead of that big pack of cars behind, so a bit of a private battle here for 6th position. There may only be 2 cars involved, but it's still nip and tuck.
Yeah, it's still going to be very fierce here, and we know the speed that Michael Chase has, having been following him for many, many a season in the old MX5 league, as he almost got a little bit too late onto the binders there, going down into yard sale, and now he's able to hold up behind Jonathan Dam as they run, trying to get a better run. That's somebody off. That's Aaron Law. My goodness, he has made a mistake there, and he now finds himself plummeting down through the order into 16th.
Yeah, he was in that big pack that I just pointed out in the background. In fact, he was at the front of it until he got nerfed off the road. That was Michael Lordy, I think, who got into the back of him and heavily into the barriers for Aaron. He rejoins in 16th, but carrying damage. He's likely to drop outside of the top 20 by the flag.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate for Aaron, but very, very hefty damage to the front of that car. Of course, as these cars are front-engined, that is going to be some pretty significant damage, if not only to the suspension, potentially to the engine as well. You saw a little bit of a look from Dakota Tabler, thinking about trying to send a move on Justin Adaconis, but we're going to focus our eyes back here on the battle between Chase and Dam right now. Is Jonathan Dam trying to send a big move up to the inside of Michael Chase?
Yeah, they go wheel to wheel then towards the left-hander at Wagon Bend, and again, one driver always has to back out of that, and on this occasion, it was Jonathan Dam who does now relinquish that 6th position, but he knows the power of the slipstream in these GR86s. He can sit there, wait until that run along the main straight, and perhaps make a challenge of his own going into these final couple of laps. Slightly wider line there into turn 5. Really, it's single file through this sequence of corners now. All about positioning yourself for the run through the last turn to try and make the pass down the front stretch.
Yeah, 4 minutes here to go from Summit Point as the leaders make their way down the back straightaway. There you can see them as they flick their way through Paddock Bend. My math is notoriously bad here, but I think we're going to be looking at about 3 laps to go here for all of these drivers as they cross over the stripe right now. As predicted, Kevin San Diego has been able to catch up to the back of Mariano Barrios. The gap coming under 0.2 of a second right now, so much so that Barrios feels the need to go defensive. San Diego still going to try to have a look down to the inside there as they go into turn 1. That's going to be Barrios carrying as much momentum as he can around the outside, but San Diego going to hold it on in, and now here comes Adaconis trying to have another bite at the apple.
And Barrios doesn't know which side to go, doesn't want to leave the gap on the inside, but he might have left it. Here comes the attack then. Adaconis settles into second. They almost make contact coming out of Wagon Bend, and somehow it is still Mariano Barrios out in front, and here comes Dakota Tabler round the outside of everyone from 4th to 3rd, and maybe 2nd place. He's late on the brakes. The gap's going to close though, and now he has to go on the defence to try and hold on to that 3rd place. I predicted a dogfight, DJ. That's exactly what we're getting.
That's exactly what we got. That's exactly what we're going to continue to get here in the final 2 minutes and 45 seconds of this race. A great move by Dakota Tabler to be able to make all of that work. Now the question is what is the number 79 driver able to do? Is he able to push his way up a little bit farther forward here? Ataconis lurks in behind about less than 2/10 behind Barrios right now. They come through Paddock Bend trying to see what they will be able to get. They come onto the main straightaway, immediately going defensive there is Mariano Barrios. That was Patrick Farrell, by the way, pushing a little bit too hard in the background, and he is now going to be off. He's going to find himself about a second off of this group, so now there were 4 up at the front. Here comes another move from Dakota Tabler. He's going to look around the outside there of Justin Ataconis, but Kevin Sandiego thinks about trying to send it up to the inside there of Tabler. And now he's going to be able to try to make it play. Here they come. It's going to be 2x2 for the final podium position. Can Kevin Sandiego make this work as they go? Looking like Tabler's going to have the advantage, and indeed, San Diego's got to back out of it.
Just temporarily allows the top 2 to pull a few car lengths. Is this Ataconis' chance to go on the attack? Probably not close enough as they go through turns 4 and 5, and by the time they get to the end of the lap, I think they'll all be back together again. San Diego so late on the brakes into turn 5. They all bunch back in towards each other once more. What a brilliant battle this is. The 3 drivers who have won races so far this season, with Dakota Tabler amongst them, but Dakota makes the mistake, runs wide, he's offline, and Kevin Sandiego sees his opportunity, gets up the inside line. He'll move back into third, but there's contact, DJ.
Contact between the 2, and Tabler is going to have his fairy tale ruined there as he goes off into the outside, and he now finds himself in 5th place trying to scramble on for positions. But here at the front of the field, it looks like a 2-way fight between Mariano Barrios and Justin Ataconis as the white flag will fly this time by. Here comes Ataconis looking to the outside as that is going to be Barrios holding down to the inside. Kevin Sandiego and Patrick Farrell looking like they're not really involved in this conversation here at this point. Down onto the binders go the first 2. That's Barrios to the inside. Ataconis trying to make things work around the outside, and that's Barrios closing the door, but now opening up another one here that Ataconis is going to try to look around the outside of Wagon Bend.
Oh, this is a risky move, but with a race win on the line, is it worth the risk? They both break at the same time. He's going to try and hang tough on the outside. What a move from Justin Ataconis. He gets the lead of the race. Move of the race by the 318 car. Now, can he hang on to the flag?
Oh my goodness, and here comes Kevin Sandiego trying to send a dive down to the inside of Mariano Barrios, down into yard sale. They're going to be 2x2, and I think unfortunately that may have almost gifted the race over to Justin Ataconis, as he now is holding on to a 0.7 of a second advantage here as they work their way through the S's. Fantastic bravery from Ataconis to be able to get that move to work coming through Wagon Bend, and now Barrios has to go defensive to try to prevent himself getting overtaken. Looking this way, looking that way is Sandiego as they come down into the braking zone for Paddock Bend. It looks like it's going to be Ataconis streaking away to the line. Sandiego losing out a little bit to Mariano Barrios. Patrick Farrell thinking about trying to maybe send a move, but it is going to be Ataconis, Barrios, Sandiego, and Farrell. My goodness gracious.
That was brilliant racing. That was Toyota GR86 racing at its very, very best. Who said you couldn't go side by side through Wagon Bend at Summit Point? That was squeaky clean, no contact between them, and Justin Ataconis becomes the first double winner of the season so far in the most dramatic of fashion. The racing up and down the order was exciting, but that fight for the win is one I will remember for a long time.
As will I, Andy, as will I. My goodness. As we take a look a little bit farther back in the field, waiting for the last couple of drivers to finish running. It looks like Raymond Day will come home 18th, followed by them and Austin Bartlett Chase, then Andrew Moran. We wait for the cross over the line. Pierre Robitaille as well. But talk about a fantastic run here for these drivers as we wait for Robitaille, your last driver to cross over the start-finish line. A really and truly closely fought battle with all classes and all drivers here today. Absolutely fantastic stuff. And let's go ahead and run you through the final finishing order here because, my goodness, that was a squeaker. Justin Ataconis taking the victory by a mere 0.5 of a second over Mariano Barrios with a truly wonderful move down through Wagon Bend. Kevin Sandiego, your pole sitter, had to settle for P3, followed by Patrick Farrell and Dakota Tabler. Then it was Jonathan Dam and Michael Chase, Rob Campbell, Michael Lordy, and Kwok Nin who round out your top 10. In 11th place, it was Andrew Sharp, followed by Matthew Wegenar and Brian Soboleski, then Anthony Dring and Brett Karakoff in your top 15. Baron Glover was 16th with Ian Cabana behind him. Raven Day, Richard Swindells, and Austin Bartlett Chase to round out your top 20. 21st was Andrew Moran, followed by Pierre Robitaille, the last driver to finish on the lead lap, with Zagalin and Tretiak and Malcolm Foster also finishing one lap down. Then we ran into some drivers that had some problems out here today. Aaron Law, Marlon McMullen, who had a great opening part of the race, Mark File, Sidney DeSantos, and Nathan Miller. Well, without further ado, that will bring us right into our podium interviews. And first and foremost, our victor here today, Justin Atakonis. And Justin, I have got to start at the end. Talk me through that move going through Wagon Bend on the final lap.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of I practiced a couple of times on the years racing this track. I just did, if I gave him just enough space that he had enough room, but I was still able to roll the speed. I was going to be able to get it because he'd kind of get off the gas a little bit and then just be able to roll around the outside.
Well, it looked like over the course of the race, I mean, it was pretty much a three-horse fight here between yourself, Mariano, and Kevin as you continued to go. How much strategy and working back was there, or how much of just an absolute dogfight at the front of the field was this?
Yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of strategy involved. I tried pitting early just to get out of the traffic and see if that would work, and it worked a little bit. Not as great as I had hoped it would be, but just after that, it's just kind of drafting and just trying to stay at the best track position and just just keep racing and just work your way back up to the front.
Well, work your way back up to the front that we did. And, you know, next time out, we sort of start on the Asian leg of this season. We head to Fuji, which is, I think, just about as different of a track as you could imagine here from Summit Point. How do you like your chances around a modern Grade 1 circuit like that?
Yeah, I don't even own Fuji right now, so I got to do some laps before then. So I don't know yet. So we're going to see when it comes Monday.
All right, we'll wait and see with you, Justin. But as for today, a victory, who makes this possible?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all my friends, they've been cheering me on, watching my stream, and then Owen, he was supposed to race tonight. I got to text him see where he's at, but he didn't make it out. And then you know, my buddy Logan Cozy, he's a big help too. Just yeah, a whole bunch of friends that made this happen.
All right, well, thank you once again, Justin. We'll see you next week.
Yep, thank you.
All right, that was your victor, Justin Atakonis. Now, Andy, I believe you have been able to catch up with P2, Mariano Barrios.
Yeah, that's right, DJ. Mariano joins us now here in the commentary booth. And, well, we've just spoken to Justin about that final lap. Mariano, what was your view of that?
Well, it was clean racing, that's for sure, but I'm just, I'm gutted because I think that's twice in a row that I get passed around the outside to lose the lead. So, you know, it is what it is. It's good racing. Justin really, he did a hell of a pass there, and I just couldn't do much from where I was at.
It was clean racing, absolutely. Not even a hint of contact between the two of you. That made it really good fun for us to watch. But how much can you enjoy these battles, knowing that you're fighting against drivers who you're very close to in the championship as well?
It was a ton of fun. I mean, I'm still sweating, so, you know, but it's great to have such clean battles like that. You know, towards the end, I had a pretty good battle there with Kevin for P2. So everybody raced pretty respectfully, at least for me. So it was a good time.
One of the big talking points in that race was the pit strategy, because clear air, or at least circulating with people who were of your pace, was really important. What went through your mind when it came to deciding on your pit strategy?
You know, I thought that I was going to end up battling with Kevin and end up losing some time. So I thought, let me just jump in the pits. I'd save some gas at that point, so I knew my pit would be relatively short, and it did work out. Thankfully, I didn't get caught in any traffic, and Baron gave me a pretty good slipstream down the straightaway twice, so I think that also helped my case.
Well, things very tight at the top of the points. You'll have lost a few there to Justin with him snatching that victory, but now we move to Fuji, a track that Justin tells us he has never driven before. So do you think that maybe gives you a chance to get some points back next week?
Yeah, I really do like Fuji. I don't know how good I'm going to be in it with this car. Some of the curbs are pretty intense, and this car doesn't like bumps, but really long straightaway, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot of drafting, and so should be a good time.
Absolutely. We are looking forward to it for sure. Mariano, thank you for joining us here, and congratulations on second place.
Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Well, there you go then, DJ. Mariano Barrios, second place. Justin Adaconis with the win. It was the third race in a row that they were joined on the podium by Kevin Sandiego, and he can catch up with you now.
Yes, he can, Kevin. It's becoming a mainstay that we talk to you and Justin and Mariano here, but from your perspective, that looked like a pretty fast and frenetic race. How was it behind the wheel?
Oh, it was a lot of fun. Hard track in these cars for sure. Lots of close racing at the front, really bumpy and everything, but it was really good. Everybody did a good job, and really close. I screwed up near the end there and lost a couple of positions, but overall it was pretty fun. Glad I had some pace. Glad I was able to keep up with these guys, and glad we had real close battles for the entire 40 minutes. It was great.
Well, you guys did have some fantastic battles, and I'm curious, obviously that little mistake coming back to bite you, but how much of that sort of count back were you doing at the end of the race? Was there a chance that you were thinking you were going to be able to get a slipstream off of the final corner to be able to run to the line, or was the strategy to be ahead when the white flag fell?
No, at this track and these cars, you definitely have to be ahead before the final corner. There's just not enough. There's not enough there to make a pass before the start finish. It's really the drag starts to take effect after start finish, and that's when you start to pick up some pace. But before start finish, you're lucky to get a tenth of a second on the car ahead of you in the draft.
Well, I'll ask you the same question that we asked everybody else. Fuji next time out. Justin said he doesn't even own it, so he's got to practice up on that. How well do you know that Japanese circuit?
It's been a while since we've been there, at least that I can remember, so I'm probably going to have to go and refresh as well, but should be fun. It's F1 circuit, right? It's been a while since I've raced on it, so I have to go back and take a look at it.
Well, I wish you all the luck in the practice there and all of that. But as for tonight, who makes this possible? Kevin, who'd you like to thank?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks to my family for putting up with this. It's it's a fun hobby for me, and it's hard to always reserve time at the same time every week. But yeah, glad they support me and watch and that sort of thing. So super happy to be here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. That was Kevin Sandiego, your third place finisher. And Andy, it looks like we've got time for a quick interview with our, I believe, 10th place finisher here, Kwok Nin.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We were watching you throughout that race, competing with the VR headset and making really good progress through the field. That looked like fun.
Yeah, I was making really good pace, trying to fight my way up there, but I was actually surprised that I was able to get like another lap in from everybody else, but I made like 3 mistakes in the pit stops. I missed my pit box, and then right after I refueled, I stayed in reverse, and then I went back, and then I had to go put it back in first to get out the pits. But doing that, I think I lost a couple positions.
Yeah, because you chose to stay out as long as possible, trying to get that clean air. That might well have worked because you still gained ground even with those mistakes. So it was almost the perfect strategy.
Yeah, but no, unfortunately, that mistake held me back, and it was such a amateur mistake. It shouldn't have happened, but I think I was too focused on getting back out on the track and then check everything else. But
I think
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to say, I think we can forgive you for the mistake because it's so intense out there, isn't it? It's an intense track here at Summit Point, and given how close the racing is, you don't really get a chance to breathe until that pit stop.
Yeah, no. All the guys on the track today were pretty respectful. I really enjoyed racing everyone. GR86 has probably became one of my favorite series because of the close battles that we can have on the track.
Yeah, and in a car that is certainly a challenging one to drive, is there anything in particular that you found in your learning process with this car that's just taken a little while to get used to?
So I used to have the 2013 Scion FRS, and I used to go nuts in that car. So I kind of I kind of know how to drive the car, but the car is definitely a lot quicker. It did take me a minute to get adjust to it as I'm downshifting the gears, because it just wanted the rear just wants to lose on you if you shift down too early. So I had to quickly adapt to that. But once I got it, it was such a fun car to drive.
Well, you're certainly getting the hang of it now. It was great to see you moving forward in that race. You provided us with plenty of entertainment, that's for sure, and we look forward to more of the same next week.
Of course, I'm looking forward to see you guys next week as well. Thanks for the broadcast.
It's our pleasure. Thank you very much, Cokenine, then joining us in the commentary box after one of the more entertaining performances out there in what was, DJ, a very entertaining race right from the first corner pretty much to the last.
Yes, it most certainly was, and we are not done, though, with entertaining races, because, Andy, we have perhaps one of the best circuits newly put to iRacing next time out at Fuji International Speedway. That'll be January 30th at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Make sure to tune in for that. That long front straightaway going to be a very, very interesting place when we talk about the draft and all of that. But worry not, folks. We are not done tonight either, because we are ready to head to the mountain. Mount Panorama here, the Bathurst circuit for the GT4 Fixed Series. Tonight, the second part of our doubleheader coverage. Drivers are out on track right now for qualifying, trying to set their hot laps as they go. But let's go ahead and take a look at our schedule here before we get into the action out on track. We obviously have started the year at Oran Park, Daytona, and then Magny-Cours last time out. We also head to Fuji next week, and then Brands Hatch, Tsukuba, Sebring, the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, and Road America to round out the season, much as we did last season there. So a very, very good smattering of circuits all over the world here in this GT4 Fixed Series. Let's go ahead also and check out our championship standings here. It is John Bodefer leading the way, but only by 9 points over Michael Diaz. Adam Brockway only about 5 points off of him. Miguel Vigo and Keith Bonilla find themselves in a very close battle there for fourth, with Vincent Trepanier and Nicholas Riceputo tied actually with Simon Thoreau. Then it's Justin Ream down in 9th place and Nicholas Belmont to round out your top 10. A very, very close championship there. Equally as close up at the top right now of the teams standings, with Alpine Stars Geodesic McLaren up on the top of the charts with the 156 points. Then Precision Racing Esports 111, only a couple of points behind them. An even closer battle, though, it has to be said, going on for P3 right now, with Unit SimSports Alpha, YS Motorsports Gold, and Alpine Stars Geodesic, Mercedes, and YS Motorsport Black, all within 3 points of one another. Race Factory find themselves in 7th place, then Delta Sport, Can-Am Racing, and Precision Racing Esports 112. And that, with all of that said and done, it's time to take a look at the qualifying here, as we've got some times finally being put on the board. And it is Miguel Vigo that will be leading the way over Michael Diaz, Fernando Jaquez, and Vincent Trepanier now jumping their way up here. And, well, Andy, it's not going to be quite as crucial, I think, to be able to get a good qualifying run, because you are going to be able to get passes done around this Bathurst circuit, but certainly you want to be starting in the top half of the field.
Yeah, for sure. Passing is certainly possible here at Mount Panorama. The risk here is that you get caught up in some sort of early issues. You can see, particularly once we start moving up the mountain through the cutting here, this really tricky, tightening, cambered, steeply uphill left-hander. At this point, it really becomes a piece of road more closely resembling something we might have seen at the weekend in the Rally Monte Carlo. It is narrow, it is tight, it is unforgiving. You've got those concrete walls just waiting to gobble you up if you make a small mistake, or indeed, if somebody in front of you makes a small mistake, very easy to get caught up in that as well. So that's where track position is significant here, trying to stay ahead of some of that early race drama, because even if you just have to slow down to avoid it, it will lose you a lot of time.
Yeah, it certainly will. And how many times have we seen now with a virtual full track blockage around the mountain here, coming up and down here. And then as we continue to ride on board with Simon Thoreau right now, coming down through Forest Elbow, clips the outside barrier there, proving my point, just how tricky of a corner that is, but how absolutely crucial it is to get right, because you really need to get maximum speed coming off of that corner to set yourself up here for the run down the Conrad straight into the cutting, and what I will argue is one of the best overtaking opportunities on this circuit.
It certainly is, but it's not easy. You've got to brake as late as you can, carry the speed here into the chase, which he does absolutely perfectly. But once you start going in there side by side, well, you're right on the limit already. Throw another car in there, and it gets very, very tight indeed. Then down towards the final corner, this really tricky left-hander at Murray's. Avoid the curb on the left, ride a little bit of it on the right, and Simon Theriault will come through to do a 2-minute 12.560, and by about half a tenth moves to pole position. So we picked a good driver to ride on board with there. That was so far the fastest lap in the session around Mount Panorama. A track, DJ, that I could watch onboards from all day and all night. Such a fantastic circuit.
It is one of the best in the world, there is no question, as right now Justin Ream able to jump his way up to the top of the charts right now with a time of 1:12.337, so a fantastic run there for the geodesic driver. He's going to be very pleased with that. That's going to be a full 0.2 of a second over Theriault there, and so that is going to be a very good run. Here is David Ben Roy, used to seeing him in the MX-5 series. He's made the switch over. Here is now John Bodefer, another one of the geodesic McLaren drivers, is going to find him his way up to the top of the charts, this time by about 1/10 of a second. And still, considering how long this circuit is, about 3.86 miles, we have some very close margins up at the front of the field. Indeed, the top 11 only separated by 1 second, so some very, very close running here for everybody. We watch Marc-André Desjardins coming down now through the chase. Let's see what the 206 Mercedes is able to get done here. He's going to bring the car. He's going to call it a day. He is going to come down into pit lane.
Yeah, very tricky pit lane entry here at Mount Panorama. That could become significant in the future as well. Very easy to overrun that tight and winding, narrow pit entry. Nicolas Belmont here, running down through the dipper, and he is 6th fastest right now. Only needs to find about half of a hundredth of a second to try and move back into the top 5. Comes out of the cutting. That really, really important turn again. That tight left-hander onto the Conrad straight. You've got to get off that corner as quickly as possible. Very easy to do what we saw earlier on and just tag the wall on exit and up through the gears. What a beautiful sound this Mercedes-AMG GT4 makes as well. Hit the braking point in a moment through the chase. This real roller coaster ride towards the end of the lap.
Yeah, jump on the binders here, bring it down and around, and I have to agree with you there, Andy. I think this Mercedes-AMG is one of the best-sounding cars in the world, whether it's the GT3 or the GT4 version of the car. Just that guttural yell that it gives out. It is absolutely incredible to listen to, but let's see what Belmont has as he crosses over the line. The number 40, good enough for P2. I would say you would be good enough for P1, but Justin Ream going to pip that away from him right at the last minute with a 2:12.090. Here is Abner Acosta. Acosta up into P5. They were a good run for him. Francis Castillo Romero in the BMW, the number 96. He is going to cross over the line. Looks like he will be in 13th place.
Yeah, absolutely. So quite a few improvements there towards the end. And Justin Ream, that is quite the lap, isn't it? Nearly 2/10 quicker than John Bodefer at the front of the pack then. And Ream, who was a winner at Daytona a couple of weeks ago, looks set to start from the front here this week. Aiden Young comes through, and that will be his personal best lap of the session, I believe. But it won't improve him too far up the grid. Justin Ream is going to lead us to the green.
Yes, he will, and that will conclude our qualifying here. So let's go ahead and run you through our grid for today. As you said, Andy, it will be Justin Ream lining up in pole position with his teammate, John Bodefer, to his outside. Simon Theriault will be in P3, followed by Nicolas Belmont, with Abner Acosta and Miguel Vigo rounding out your top 6. Arnaud Genet will be in P7, followed by Michael Diaz, with Vincent Trepanier and Fernando Yaquez rounding out your top 10. It's going to be Alessandro Torchio Sergio in P11, followed by Alec Bergstrom, in P12. Francis Castillo-Romero will line up 13th with Frankie Arvello flanking him. J.R. Williams lines up 15th, followed by Nicholas Riceputo with Adam Brockway and Keith Bonilla in 18th. 19th is Ronnie Suarez, followed by Chris Hudson with Tony Costello and David Van Roy 22nd. 23rd is Jose Lockwood and Alex May will start to his outside. Carlos Villa will be in 25th with Patrick Bachelard to his outside. Then to the inside of the next row, it'll be Joy Paguro and Drew Lidke. Aiden Young starts 29th with J.S. Marshall in 30th. Kevin Ayers lines up 31st with Marc-Andre Desjardins in 32nd. Bradley Beeman in 33rd and Philippe Mignon in 34th position. A quick pace lap around here. It'll start just before the just before the chase. And so not a lot of time to get these tires or brakes up to temperature. That can be a little bit of a problem here, especially considering how hard on the brakes you have got to be going up into Griffin's Bend and into the cutting, Andy.
Yeah, absolutely, and that will be a trouble spot, I'm pretty sure, here on this first lap. It's probably my favourite track in the world to hot lap this one, but as soon as you have traffic around you, it becomes an absolute living nightmare in the early stages. So let's hope they all get through cleanly, especially since we've got quite a few of the heavy hitters in the points not having qualified too well. Michael Diaz second in the points, he starts 8th. Adam Brockway, who's third in the points, is all the way down in 17th place. So quite a few quick drivers buried in the pack, and they'll be hoping and praying for a clean start.
Yes, they will, or at least a start that they're able to avoid any of the problems before they get to the mountain. As we said, once you get into the mountain, it becomes a little bit more difficult to try to avoid any sort of incidents. We ride on board here as drivers do a little bit of weaving back and forth to try to build up some speed and some heat into those tires right now. The iRacing pace car pulls off down into pit lane. Justin Ream takes control of the field as they work their way down into Murray's Corner. The whole field here holding behind that Geodesic Racing number 912 as he gets on the loud pedal, and we are racing from Bathurst. It is a good getaway there from Ream. His teammate Bodefer going to try to hold off there behind, as it looks like Simon Therio going to try to be able to send a little bit in behind, but not able to get anything done. The first couple of lines of cars are through Hell Corner nice and easily, as it looks like the entire field is able to work their way through, and we get going on the mountain straight.
One of the best sights in racing, that a pack full of GT cars pouring out of Hell Corner and making their way up the mountain straight for the first time. A few of them jockeying for position into Griffin's Bend, where the Geodesic McLarens are flying in formation at the front of the pack. This, though, is where you need to get settled down, get into single file through the tricky left-hander at the cutting. The leaders doing it. Further back, though, there is drama.
No, we've got a car around. I believe that's Patrick Bachelard who got it wrong coming up through Griffin's Bend, and that will be a return back to pit lane for the number 100 machine. But up at the front of the field, Justin Ream looking like he's got no problems. Oh, Thierio's had a problem. He is into the wall, I believe. There is the Mercedes limping his way around up the hill.
Oh, that's so easily done on cold tyres, especially.
Oh!
And there is the roadblock you mentioned, DJ. It has all gone wrong in the mid-pack with 3 or 4 cars with serious damage. That was always the danger here on the mountain.
Yes, it was, and that is going to take out a large number of drivers. Tony Costello, Keith Bonilla, Ronnie Suarez, David Van Roy, Jose Lockwood, Alex May, Bachelard, who had already had that problem, and J.S. Marshall looking like he is another one involved in that. But my goodness gracious, that is one of the more, well, let's call it surprising incidents that we've seen here from Bathurst, as that was a complete track blockage, multiple cars involved.
Yeah, and I think that was Reed Park as well, which is exactly where we saw the moment from the front runners as well earlier on. It's so easy just to clip the wall through that change of direction, especially on cold tyres. Probably not quite flat out in a GT4 car on cold tyres. Certainly if you're side by side, it isn't. And that is where the problems can arise. No such problems for Geodesic, though. They have got this locked out at the front of the field. Justin Ream and John Bodefer already starting to work together to try and break away.
Yes, they are, and the straight line speed of the McLaren should be helping them out here today. I think the real question for me is going to be how long does Miguel Vigo wait around behind Nicholas Belmont to try to send that move? We're going to take a look back at the replay here. There you see the one Mercedes just getting it wrong, careening off the barriers, and then the absolute domino effect there coming up and over. That was in Reed Park, exactly as you called it, Andy. A very, very unfortunate incident.
It's like NASCAR racing at Bristol or something. As soon as one car gets it wrong, they just start ricocheting off the concrete walls and everyone else has nowhere to go. It's a completely blind part of the circuit there. You're coming over a crest, the concrete walls are blocking your view as well, and if it all goes wrong for somebody ahead, there is little to nothing that those further back can do to avoid them.
Yeah, exactly. There you see, and one of the reasons why this is such a narrow portion of the track, you actually saw that speed camera there. So we're going to take a look on board. There is exactly to your point, just nowhere to go with all of those cars having to slow down to an absolute crawl to be able to get your way through there. And great job by, I believe that may have been Carlos Vila, to be able to get his way on through there. A fantastic job to be able to keep that nice and clean.
One of the drivers of note who was involved in that was Keith Bonilla. He was 5th in the championship arriving here tonight, and he unfortunately is going to lose quite a lot of points as a result of his involvement in that big pile up on lap 1. Leaders making their way down the Conrad Straight though, and the centre geodesic McLarens were starting to pull away. They're really pulling a big gap as we get another view of how quickly your dream start to the race can turn into a nightmare here at the mountain.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that may have been Frankie Arvello there that we were able to look out at the back of to be able to see that all happening behind him. But to your point, yeah, Nicholas Belmont, it was Chris Hudson that we looked out of the back of there. He was the one that was able to get his way on by. But to your point, some good battles here up through the field. There we are able to hold on. Remember, he had that problem coming up and over the mountain early on. You can see the damage on that Mercedes. You can see it kind of squealing there a little bit under braking as he's in a battle right now with J.R. Williams and Nicholas Risaputo.
Yeah, so Terrio sort of got forgotten in all of that. He was the first to make contact with the wall at Reed Park, and I kind of thought that was his race done. It looked like he was pulling out of the way, maybe had terminal damage, but he's continuing going in the Mercedes, and thankfully was still ahead of the carnage that unfolded behind him. We've got some Aston Martin tandeming going on here, heading up the mountain straight as well. Michael Diaz there pushing his teammate Abner Acosta through into 4th, and Miguel Vigo, dropping down to 6th.
Yeah, and I just went back and looked at the replay there. It looks like Vigo just got it wrong coming out of Hell Corner, may have hit onto the curb on the outside, and the car kind of spat him back to the inside of the track, and so he lost some running going down the mountain straight, and that's what's seen him fall back behind these two Precision Racing Esports Aston Martins. That's why he is no longer running up at the front of the field with them, but now giving us a good little battle here as they climb up and over the mountain right now through McPhillamy Park, down into Skyline. Really and truly one of the most terrifying corners in the world. Absolutely blind sequence here as you now go down through the dipper. I commend any driver that is able to get this right, let alone getting it right lap after lap.
Absolutely. We just saw Michael Diaz get it a little bit wrong, only a fraction out really over the top of Skyline, and that meant that he was wrong into the next corner and the next one and the next one. You get further away from the ideal racing line with every change of direction. Once you get it wrong once in that sequence, you're going to lose a lot of time, and he manages to hang on to 5th place. Miguel Vigo though looking to retaliate after that moment that he had at the start of the lap. He's in the draft heading down Conrad. He's presented with the right hand side of the road into the chase. That's the inside for the right hand king, but the outside into the part of the track that matters, onto the brakes and into the left hander. The front engine Aston Martin handling the curbs well, and Michael Diaz hangs on to 5th place.
That was a very good defense from Michael Diaz. I'm very surprised by that he was able to mount that good of a defense coming down through that corner. Clearly, that number 1 machine not wanting to give anything away here at this point. But I've got to say, Vigo, we know the speed that number 62 Geodesic Racing Mercedes has underneath it. I've got to think that he's going to be trying to push as hard as he can here. But again, another issue coming out of Hell Corner. This time, it just looked like the steering wouldn't comply, and he rode over the grass there for a good couple of yards.
Bit like the cutting, really, where your exit speed is so important, and so the temptation is to just pick up that throttle a little bit too early. Again, that's another front-engine car as well, the AMG, and so it will naturally understeer a bit if you pick that throttle up a bit too soon, and once you get a wheel onto that grass, that's it. It's very, very hard to get off it.
No, as we take a look at a replay here, one of the Precision Racing Esports BMWs getting turned around there coming out of the chase, and that unfortunately is going to put them farther down the order here at this point. We keep our eyes focused, though, on that battle with Acosta, Diaz, and Vigo. Vigo losing a little bit of time as a result of that off-track earlier on in the lap, but he's been able to hold on to it relatively well here at this point. He's still within touching distance of Michael Diaz in front of him, and we'll have to see how he handles it. Now, it's not necessarily like we're going to be dealing with a lot of difference in handling between the Aston Martin and the Mercedes. As you said, both of them are front-engine cars. The Mercedes, though, the engine is placed a little bit farther back. It's a little bit closer to center. I have a colleague that likes to refer to it as sort of a mid-front engine in the way that it goes. So maybe a little bit more responsive than the Aston Martin coming down the hill, but clearly Vigo gets a good run there. We take a look back at the front of the field here. Ream continues to lead over Bodefer, over Belmont, but they are still within drafting range of one another and starting to grow the gap over Abner Acosta.
A strong pace here from Nicholas Belmont, actually. It looked as though those McLarens were going to be tough to keep up with, but he is keeping it with them, and actually he looks to be closing in slightly over the second half of this lap. So 2 McLarens ahead of the Mercedes AMG GT4, and then keep an eye to Abner Acosta in 4th position as he tries to wrestle that Aston Martin onto terms with the leading group. Difficult position this, though, for Nicholas Belmont, because he knows that those 2 teammates, at least for the time being, are going to work together, and that will make them all the tougher to pass.
And this was an issue that I thought I saw a little bit earlier on. Alessandro Torchio getting things wrong, coming to blows at the exit of the chase. That McLaren able to get back and going in 16th, but not without losing quite a few positions. But yeah, here is what I would have to worry about if I was Nicholas Belmont, is the 2 of them able to work together a little bit and maybe do a little bit of leapfrog, maybe even do a little bit of bump drafting. Obviously, over the past week, we saw the iRacing 24 Hours of Daytona taking place, and the big story there in the GT3 category was the bump drafting that occurred. So maybe these geodesic drivers trying to take a leaf out of that book. We could see a little bit of that bump drafting here coming down Conrad or coming down Mountain Straight.
Yeah, if Apex Racing team can do it for 24 hours, I'm pretty sure that the Geodesic team can manage it for 40 minutes here around Mount Panorama. But Justin Ream flirting with disaster there as he came out of the cutting right up against the concrete wall. May have even scraped it slightly with the right rear corner of his McLaren 570S. Over the crest they go, down into what Darrell Waltrip famously called a geological oddity a few years ago on his visit to Mount Panorama, and it's hard to argue with him. That roller coaster ride plunging downhill towards the cutting, and you can see the concentration on John Bodefer's face just to keep it within those barriers here as he follows his leader down the hill.
Massive credit to our director here, Hugo Luis, to show us this. I love seeing him come off of Forrest's elbow. You can almost see his body relax. Able to look in the rearview mirror, take a look at where Nicholas Belmont is, what kind of run that is, let his body breathe a minute. That's exactly what you want to be doing on these longer straightaways, is really just giving yourself that chance to breathe before you have to get back in and get yourself up to the complete concentration that is required to run from Griffin's Bend all the way down through Forrest's Elbow.
Yeah, I've never experienced a track quite like it, but that is absolutely what you do go through as a driver. You come out of Hell Corner, you head up Mountain Straight, you take a deep breath, and then it almost feels like you don't breathe again until you come out of Forest Elbow, and it is that sense of relief, that tension in your body releases when you come out onto the Conrod Straight, and then you remember that you've got to get the chase right at the end of that straight, which is not an easy corner to nail either. So yeah, really one of, if not the most challenging of racetracks in the world, not just because of the technically demanding nature of it, but the speeds you're carrying so close to those concrete walls.
looks like we have a taker down into pit lane. This is Francis Castillo Romero coming on into the pits. I did spy a little bit of damage on that car, so I wonder if this may be a damage-induced pit stop, as with really only 12 minutes into this race, I would think that would be a little bit early to be coming down into the pits. But nevertheless, we focus back on John Bodefer right now as he follows behind his teammate Justin Ream up the front of the field. Ream and Bodefer have led since the drop of the green flag. Terrio, the driver that found himself in P3, fallen all the way down to 11th place here at this point, courtesy of that little incident he had. And Nicholas Belmont happy to pick up the position and happy to pick up the slack. But we've got to keep in mind here that those two Precision Racing Esports drivers of Abner Costa and Miguel Diaz, they're not too far behind. They are within the slipstream range, so this could be a 4, 5, 6 car battle before we close our eyes.
Yeah, I've been watching those lap times, and the second trio, if you like, the two Aston Martins of Acosta and Diaz, and then Miguel Vigo in the Mercedes, they were a few tenths quicker than the leaders last time around. They were in the 2-minute 12s, the leading trio in the low to mid 2-minute 13, so that gap is definitely coming down, and the closer they get, you're quite right, they will start to get more and more of a draft too. And that will change the dynamic, I think, of this lead group. Right now, Ream and Bodefer quite content to follow each other around, to work together. Nicholas Belmont probably quite happy to sit in behind them for now as well. But with the arrival of those Aston Martins on his tail, I think Nicholas in particular might feel the need to go on the attack.
Yeah, I think he might as well. The only counter that I would potentially give to that is if you are farther back in this line, you are going to be doing some pretty significant fuel saving. As to prove your point there, Michael Diaz sets the fastest lap of the race that time by with the 2:12.487. But if you are farther back in line, you're going to be able to lift and coast coming into the heavier braking zones. And on a longer circuit like this, it's not like you're going to be able to gain a lap necessarily and be able to go a lap longer. But if you use a little bit less fuel, that will certainly mean that you have to spend less time stationary in pit lane.
Yeah, save half a second even in that pit stop. That could be crucial given how closely they're battling. Speaking of close battling, this is the fight going on just outside of the top 10, and that was a bit of a squeeze heading up towards Griffin's Bend. Simon Terrio, I believe, here getting in the thick of the battle as well as he fended off Fernando Jaquezler into the right-hander, and there was definitely a little bit of body contact there between those two Mercedes AMGs. It's hard, though, in this midfield group, DJ, to find a car that doesn't have a little bit of battle damage from the early stages. Lots of these cars involved in at least one of those lap 1 incidents.
Yeah, at least getting a scrape or a bruise from them, as it were, as they now fly their way up the hill there through Solomon Park and now up into the rest of the mountain. Yeah, a lot of these drivers, you'll get a little bit of a nick here and there, even if it's just a solo incident. You mentioned a little bit earlier, Justin Ream flirting with disaster on the outside line, almost looking like he was coming into contact with one of the barriers. You can pick up just the merest modicum of damage and keep on going, but more often than not, if you make a pretty substantial contact with the outside wall, your car, your body, and the drivers around you are going to know about it very quickly.
Yeah, the designers of these cars designed them in a certain way for a reason, and that's because this is, in their opinion, the fastest aerodynamic shape for the car to be. As soon as you start driving into things and changing the shape of the aerodynamics, surprisingly enough, it doesn't go quite as quickly anymore, and that's before we start looking at damaging things like suspension and engine and all that stuff. So I'm sure there are quite a few cars in this group who are running perhaps a little bit off their optimum pace, but an important race this for Simon Terrio to try and bounce back from, actually, because he's still got the chance to score some decent points. If he can break through to the front of this group, I think he's still got some pace in that number 89 Mercedes. Some clear air might allow him to pull away from them, and maybe with some nifty pit strategy, he could still be challenging for a top half dozen by the end of the race.
Yes, certainly could, but we'll have to wait and see. 25 minutes or thereabouts down and left to go in this race. About 15, 16 minutes in the books here as we see these drivers snaking their way down the mountain straight. Again, the draft so crucial here up at the front and all across the field, as you really need that to be able to come into play. We haven't really seen a lot of moves. Of course, as soon as I say that, there goes Terrio down into the inside, and he is going to make that move stick in the Mercedes. A good move to get by Alec Bergstrom, and now it even looks like that Fernando Jaquez thinking about trying to make a move there going up through the cutting. That's not going to play out, and now he's going to have to stay single file for his trip up and down the mountain.
Yeah, and as I said, that was important there for Simon Theriault to try and break through to the front of this group and now try to get his head down. He's clearly quicker than the cars that he was stuck amongst, and now he can really show us what he's got. We know he's got pace because he qualified at the front. He was running third until about a third of the way around that first lap when it all went wrong at Reed Park. But he needs to put that behind him now. Had a non-score last week as well when we were racing at Magny Curb, and he really needs to try and get some points on the board here today.
Yeah, certainly does, and I think a lot of the drivers here, that was a big puff of brake smoke from one of the BMWs. I believe that was Alec Bergstrom. I'm not sure if that was contact with the wall or if that was just a little bit of a scared moment where he jumped on the binders, but that is most certainly contact with the outside wall coming off of Forrest's elbow, and licking his lips here at this point has got to be Fernando Yaquez. He recognizes somebody ready to be pounced upon, but I don't know if he's got the straight line speed, does that number 26 to make it work, and he's not tucking up behind in the draft nearly as much as I thought he would, so clearly not coming to play here. Going to try to take a little bit of a look going down into the chase, but he's going to have to stay behind here at this point. And I've got to say, if I'm Alec Bergstrom, I am thanking my lucky stars. That was a very, very lucky break to not get absolutely swamped coming off of Forrest's elbow.
Especially given the fact that the Mercedes does not look to be carrying any damage, whereas I think maybe Bergstrom's BMW has had a bit of contact at the front end. So even with that, able to fend off the AMG as they dropped down towards the end of another lap and turn their way through Hull Corner and up Mountain Straight once again. This all happening some 12 seconds or so behind that lead group. We really have checked out now those top six, some 7 seconds or so clear of the rest of the pack. This battle is set to rage on, I think. Up the straight they go. The slipstream starts to take effect, and that does make it difficult to break away from a group here. You don't think of slipstreaming particularly as being important in GT racing, but a track like this, it does play a part.
Yeah, it certainly does, and really no matter where you are, if you've got long enough straights in GT3s, GT4s, you certainly can get that slipstream to come into play. Road America in the States is a prime example of a circuit like that where I have seen some mega drafting going on. And as we said before, I think for some of these drivers, we may be waiting and we may be seeing a little bit of a wait-and-see approach as they're able to save some fuel. As again, if you're able to make that jump in the pit stop, not necessarily extending by an extra lap, but just being able to take that pit stop a little bit later, having a shorter pit stop as a result of everything, it's just going to come back to benefit you, and it may be able to help you get a little bit farther ahead.
Yeah, that's certainly something that will be on the driver's mind now that things are settling down. We're approaching half-race distance as well now, so this one is flying by, and the intensity of the battling will only increase after the stops. That was a close moment there for Jaquez as he came out of the Forest elbow there. So easy to pick up that understeer, such a steep drop on the apex there, and again, you're trying to get to the throttle early, and it's easy to wash out towards that wall. I think he just avoided any significant contact, but another scary moment.
I'll tell you who I don't think avoided any significant contact, and that was John Bodefer, who definitely made contact coming out of the outside of Forrest's elbow. A little bit of contact there for the McLaren driver, but he's able to keep everything together. No real problems there for him up in second place, but he did certainly make contact. We continue to keep on this battle right now with the rest of the fields here. Theriault trying to be able to just stretch that gap as much as possible, but Bergstrom holding on to him as much as possible. They have been able to drop behind them Riceputo and Torchio a little bit farther back down, but still, this is a very, very compact train. The two you see up at the front of this, that's Arnaud Genet and Vincent Trepanier, who are starting to pull away here a little bit, but the rest of them, not so much.
Yeah, and Theriault's certainly not breaking away from Alec Bergstrom, is he? So the BMW coming back at the Mercedes driver now, although they did both on the previous lap, about 3/4 of a second quicker than Genet and Trepanier ahead of them. So if they keep that up, they could still close in on the 7th and 8th place drivers before too much longer. Only a few seconds between that pair and this big pack of GT4 cars behind, which makes its way up out of the cutting and towards this fantastic run through these quick left-handers across the top of the hill, where passing isn't really an option. Here it's all about staying on the tail of the car ahead, and actually that makes negotiating this part of the circuit even tougher, because your reference points, your visual reference points are lost just because of how close you are to the cars ahead.
Yeah, exactly. You've really got to know your braking zones and know exactly where you're coming into. If you are a driver in these kind of circumstances, you just have to make sure that you get everything right. And remember, if you're trailing behind a driver as close as we're seeing here, you've got to adjust your braking zones. If you're Jaquez closing in that close behind Alec Bergstrom, you have to adjust your braking zones to what Bergstrom is doing, and especially on a circuit that is so millimeter precise as is that middle part of Bathurst. It always just blows my mind when I'm able to see drivers running this close to one another.
And there are so many corners on this track, particularly across the top of the mountain, that are full commitment corners as well. They don't really have that sort of traditional braking point, turning point. You know, you can attack them in a few different ways, and that means you really do have to respond to what the cars around you are doing. Now, whilst we've been watching this entertaining battle, I think, DJ, we've had a bit of a shuffle of the order towards the front. John Bodever down to third now.
Yep, and I was able to keep an eye on exactly what that was. He just had missed his braking zone coming down into Murray's corner, and that was enough to be able to send him to the outside and promote Nicholas Belmont up into P2 at this point. Now, the problem for Belmont is he does have about 1.2 seconds to try to gain up to Justin Ream. With Bodefer falling back as he did, that's actually going to break the slipstream, I think, here for Ream, and he may be able to try to scamper off into the distance.
Michael Diaz has pitted as well, so he was the first of the leaders to head down the pit lane. He had been running in about 4th or 5th place, I think, at the time, so the first to blink as far as the lead group is concerned. All of this happening some way ahead of this particular group that we're following, but Simon Theriault continuing to try and close in on Arnaud Genet and Vincent Trepanier, and on the previous lap was over a second quicker than them, so he's not that far away now from being able to fight for a top 6.
No, he's certainly not, as this is starting to get a little bit interesting with strategy starting to come into play. As you said, Diaz coming down into pit lane, albeit what I would anticipate being a little bit early here, but I think once we see the pit stops coming into play, and once drivers have made those pit stops, I think at that point, Andy, the gloves start to come off a little bit, and we're going to see a little bit more frantic passing, as this is Bradley Beeman coming out of pit lane. He is another one of the drivers that will have taken his pit stop. I believe Drew Lidke also coming down as well on this most recent lap. Let's keep an eye here up at the front of the field, see if any more of your leaders decide to follow Diaz's order here and come on down into pit lane. It doesn't look like we're going to see a lot of them opting to do so. I think they're going to try to run these tanks as long as possible, as indeed the full top 5. No, excuse me, Ream and Belmont both coming down into pit lane. They caught me by surprise there.
Yeah, so there you go then. That will change things. John Bodefer back through to the lead. Abner Acosta second and Miguel Vigo third. But this is significant. I think this is a direct response to Michael Diaz coming in a lap ago. They didn't want to risk Michael getting almost an undercut on them, not through fresh tyres necessarily, but just through getting that clean air. Oh, we've had a spin in the pit lane. I know I said the pit entry was tricky, but that's a very odd place to end up. J.R. Williams pointing the wrong way in pit entry. This, though, a significant moment in the race, DJ.
Yeah, very significant moment in the race. Let's remember here that Bodefer, Acosta, and Vigo all decided to stay out, as did Trepanier and Fernando Jaquez. Other than that, pretty much the entire field deciding to dive down into pit lane, as we're going to take a look here at exactly what happened to J.R. Williams. Looks like he just caught a little bit too much curb coming on in through that tricky chicane.
Yeah, and carried a lot of speed in as well. That was an odd one. I don't think I've ever seen anyone lose it quite in that way before. But anyway, back to the leaders of those who have stopped then. And there we're starting to get our answer as to how this is going to play out. We've got Justin Ream ahead of Nicholas Belmont, ahead of Michael Diaz. So Diaz's early stop didn't really work. And now we ride on board with Miguel Vigo running in third position, right behind Abner Acosta. And I wonder whether now on this lap we will see these three choose to pit. I don't know if it's essential for them to, though. They've got some nice clean air. The others, as we've just seen, are getting involved in some pretty close quarters battling, so perhaps staying out an extra lap could be an option.
It very well could be. I think especially if you're farther back in line and you see the other two, if you see Botifer and Acosta decide to dive down into pit lane, it may be a situation where Vigo decides to stay on out. Now remember, Botifer and Vigo are members of sister teams, so there's probably some communication going on there between the two, but we'll keep our eyes here as they work their way down into the chase right now, waiting to see that McLaren bringing its way along. Leading the way is the number 67 of John Botifer. Going to bring that car out of the chase right now, looking at all three of them. Botifer looks like he's coming in, as does Acosta and Vigo. Everybody coming down into pit lane.
Well, we get a look at just how tricky that pit entry is. Let's hope they all keep it clean. Yes, they do. No repeats of the JR Williams spin that we saw a lap ago. And the top three then make their way down the pit lane. So keep an eye on that timing tower. Justin Ream, the first of those to have made a pit stop in sixth. Michael Diaz, Nicholas Belmont right behind him. Simon Theriault has been in too. It's really all about Ream, Diaz and Belmont and where they are when these three cars leave the pit lane.
Well, looks like Botifer has come to rest in his stall right now. We're looking at about a 14.4 second pit stop for Justin Ream. We'll have to see if Botifer is going to be able to match that here as Ream comes on by. That's lap traffic in front of Ream. Botifer out and on his way as Ream is able to streak on by, and they're going to come out just about in perfect sync with one another. Look at that.
Wow, and it is a geodesic 1-2-3 look, because you've got the Hydro race car in third of Miguel Vigo too. And look at the gap that they've pulled too. Acosta and Diaz a long way back now. Nicholas Belmont, who was second when the pit stops began, comes out of all of that in sixth. So Belmont with the big loser there, really. The Race Factory Mercedes, maybe a slow start, maybe he was held up slightly on in or out lap, whatever it is. He's got a real uphill struggle now to get back into that top five.
Yeah, he certainly does, and it looks like the pit stop was a bit on the long side at 15.8 seconds, but the average of what I'm seeing is about 16.5 seconds for the pit stop. It was the geodesic team, Ream, Botifer, and Vigo, that were really able to make quick work of their pit stop with a 14.4, a 14.3, and a 14.1 respectively. So clearly, geodesic Alpine Stars teams knowing how to get their pit crews oiled up and ready to go.
And that is really indicative of the hard work they've put into practicing the pit stops. You know, we often forget about that in sim racing. You don't have that variable of the pit crews and people, you know, fumbling or being quicker than others in the pit lane, but there's still stuff that you can do as a driver to make that pit stop go by a little bit more smoothly, making sure you hit your marks. Don't slow down too early as you come in towards the pit lane entry line. Don't slide through your box. Make sure that you're putting exactly the right amount of fuel in, and that's another thing to consider. You don't want to risk short fueling it and running out on the final lap. So some of those who had quick pit stops, let's hope they put enough gas in.
Yeah, I think Miguel Vigo, the one that I'm particularly looking at with that 14.1 second pit stop, that is, for my calculations, the quickest stop out of anyone in the field. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on that number 62 to make sure that he is going to be okay by the time the race ends, especially considering the fact that Vigo's about 1.7 seconds behind his teammate of John Botifer. So it's not like he's going to be able to do any fuel saving here in these last 10 minutes or so. He's going to have to make this work all on his lonesome.
Yes, he is indeed. It's easy to miscalculate that in the heat of battle, or perhaps miscalculate how many laps you're going to do. It's not unheard of for the leader to cross the line with 5 seconds to go and end up doing a whole extra lap, which they weren't expecting. And this is not, as we've said, a short track. It's also a track where you're on the throttle for a long time, so that fuel burn a little bit higher than it would be elsewhere. You've got to get those fuel numbers right. 10 minutes to go then. Justin Ream looking good for the time being out in front. And this group of cars in a slightly different order than when we last saw them, TJ, but they're all still right on top of each other, fighting towards the back of the top 10.
And that's Alec Bergstrom trying to make a move there and making the move successfully on Fernando Yaquez as they make their way down the straight. Trying to come in behind there is Adam Brockway as well, sending that number 42 BMW down into the inside of Griffin's Bend in a fantastic move. Can they make it 3 for 3, putting Yaquez down as Nicholas Raiceputo, the latest one, thinking about trying to make that move go up through the corners as they come through the cutting. Raiceputo is going to have to wait in line there as it doesn't look like, Arnaud Genet was the driver there in the Aston Martin, able to make it move. So that is a terrible sequence of corners for Fernando Yaquez, losing 3 spots in just as many corners.
Yeah, there's absolutely no grip on the outside at Griffin's Bend, so as soon as Adam Brockway sent it up the inside of him, Fernando was always in for a rough ride there. An important move that for Brockway. He's third in the championship coming into tonight's race. I mentioned that he didn't qualify well. That meant that he got delayed in some of the first lap shenanigans. He's now got himself into the top 10. He's got his teammate Alec Bergstrom in front of him. And then about 3 seconds up the road to Simon Theriault, who we know is carrying a little bit of damage. So let's watch for what sort of progress Brockway can make here in these final 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think Brockway could be one to definitely move his way up forward. And let's not forget that that is his teammate for YS Motorsports directly ahead of him in the form of Alec Bergstrom. So we may even see a little bit of team orders coming into play here if Brockway is very concerned about the standings by the time this is all said and done. Takes a big heaping of curb there coming through the chase. And he's got to be careful about that. That BMW, relatively notorious for not liking the curbs all that much. He doesn't want to be doing that too much here, Andy, or he'll find himself pointed the wrong way around.
Yeah, you sort of want to be riding the curbs through some corners here at Mount Panorama, but generally it's not really the quickest way around in any car, and certainly, as you said, that BMW, it can be a little bit bouncy over some of the bigger curbs. Just rides it slightly there into Hell Corner. The exit curbs, okay, so those really big apex curbs through places like the Chase and Murray's Corner at the end of the lap that you want to steer clear of. The two teammates then running in tandem up the hill, already starting to pull away from Arnaud Genet and Fernando Jacquet behind them. And as they turn towards Griffin's Bend, they work in tandem to try and close in the group ahead. And closing in, DJ, is something that John Bodefer is doing in second place. That lead gap is coming down.
Yes, it's under 0.5 of a second here as your two leading McLarens work their way up the hill right now. Grows a little bit as they come out of McPhillamy Park, but we could very well have a battle up for the lead. And I've got to think here that for these two Geodesic Racing drivers that we could see a situation where they decide to play nice here for the last couple of laps, but when it comes into the last lap, that may be a gloves-off situation, and we may see a full-out scrap here for the lead.
Yeah, well, an interesting situation, though, because Bodefer, of course, is the points leader and is set to take a lot of points out of a lot of his nearest rivals, because many of them have had problems here tonight, whereas Justin Ream is not a championship contender. He didn't race at the first round at Oran Park, so he finds himself deeper in the points. So for the team, it's more important really for Bodefer to get the win, but it's Ream who's got the track position advantage and would love to take a race victory. So again, interesting to see what sort of team tactics we see here from Geodesic, whether they choose to put Bodefer ahead and how hard Justin Ream decides to fight this. He's certainly been caught by his teammate, and how much of a battle will have between these two awaits to be seen.
Yes, it does, as they're going to cross over the stripe here with about 6 minutes to go, and I think that could be potentially 3 to go for them. So not a whole lot of time for them to decide it, with lap times at about the 2:13s, 2:12s here at this point. And I do have to say, Ream looked particularly slower on that last lap, putting in a 2:13.16 compared to Bodefer's 2:12.67. Now, crucially, that was also matched by their other teammate, Miguel Vigo, behind them with 2:12.68. So plenty of good times to be had here and good speed to be had for all of these drivers. But we will have to see if that team tactic comes into play. The other thing to keep in mind is that drop weeks haven't been factored into those scoring chances for these drivers yet. So Ream could still find himself skyrocketing up through the order if that first week is dropped and he's able to have clean races throughout the rest of the year.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that is the joy of dropped scores. It makes our lives difficult trying to work out the points, but for the drivers it means that if they have to miss a race or if they have a bit of bad luck one night, it doesn't necessarily derail their championship completely. So I am a fan of drop scores, even if it makes the mathematics a little bit tricky at times, and certainly Justin Ream will be a fan because that does give him the incentive to defend this race lead, and perhaps it would be surprising to see John Bodefer waved through at this stage. 1, 2, 3 for Geodesic is looking good. They just need to decide between themselves the order in which they'll stand on that podium.
Yes, they do, and crucially, they've been able to maintain that gap, or rather, Miguel Vigo has been able to maintain that gap between himself and Abner Acosta, so no real concerns in the Precision Racing Esports driver coming up from behind in that Aston Martin. That gap maintains about 1.5, 1.6 seconds as they work their way down the Conrad Straight. We're also seeing some separation a little bit farther back down in the field. That battle we were talking about earlier between Bergstrom and Brockway, not looking like it is really coming into play here at this point, although Brockway is very close behind Bergstrom right now, and I think we are about to see that pass, and that looks like it may be a little bit assisted there. I think Bergstrom lifting off a little bit and letting Brockway on through as they work their way by a little bit of lap traffic.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That was JS Marshall, by the way, who is a lap down, moving out of their way. And as you quite rightly said, Adam Brockway moving through into ninth. I think they perhaps just waited to do that until they figured out whether or not they could catch Simon Terrio. That gap was going up, not down, though. And I think they realised at that point that it was time to move Adam Brockway into ninth, so that now Alec Bergstrom can perhaps play rear gunner and try and keep Arnaud Genet behind if that Aston Martin gets any closer. So Adam Brockway into ninth then. We've got, of course, Miguel Vigo running well in third, and we've already documented Justin Ream and John Bodefer running well too, as there's been a mistake, has there, by Adam Brockway, and they're going to change positions again.
All right, going to change it right back down. They're going to be side by side coming down the mountain straight here. It looks like team orders may be off a little bit as Bergstrom is able to get on back by there again. A little bit of a poke from behind there as well from Jaquez, trying to see if he was able to make anything work in his number 26 Mercedes-AMG onto the Aston Martin up in front of him of Arnaud Genet. And there is the swap over once again. Now that looked like team orders to me.
Yeah, I think so. It doesn't take Sherlock Holmes to work that one out, does it? The trouble is they've cost themselves a lot of time through all of that. That mistake from Brockway and the real slowing down that Alec Bergstrom had to do to let him back through means that Genet, Jacquet and Rice Pudo, Rice Pudo's a bit further back, isn't he? But certainly Genet and Jacquet right with them now to make this a four-way fight for ninth place. So Alec Bergstrom really does have some defensive work to do to try and protect his teammate who is better placed in the championship. Through the dip we come for the second to last time, and barring any more mistakes, Brockway now looks as though he is finally starting to make a break.
Ooh, a little bit of a wide run there in behind from Jacquet, trying to see what he was able to do. Not exactly able to get that to go. Oh, big puff of brake smoke. That Mercedes-AMG looking very, very fearsome. And now that is going to be a bad run off of the corner there for Genet. And that is going to set up Jacquet to be able to get the run here. He's going to be able to move in front. A brilliant move to just take advantage of others' misfortune and be able to move that Mercedes-AMG. But now here comes the fight back from the 312 Aston Martin. Is he going to have a little bit of a look up to the inside of the chase? No, he is going to be held back into line, and that black, yellow, and purple Aston Martin will find themselves farther down in the order.
Yes, they will. Further up the order, though, Simon Terrio moving ahead of Vincent Trepanier now into 7th place. So positions changing here towards the very end of the race. We're on to the final lap now, and this, DJ, is where all of the intrigue is. Is Justin Ream going to be able to hang on? How much of a risk is John Bodefer willing to take? And if he is willing to take it, where does he make the move? A bit wide there for Ream through Griffin's Bend. The move is on, I think, if Bodefer feels it's worth taking the risk.
Well, and they've got to be a little bit careful there. Their teammate, Miguel Vigo, they're only about 9/10 of a second behind. He'll get a nice helping of the slipstream when they come down the Conrad Straight, so it's not exactly like they're able to do this without any suspicion coming from behind them here at this point. The team of McLarens right now working their way up the hill, still charging towards McPhillamy Park right now, as now they bring the cars through the left-hander, coming towards Skyline. There they go. Now it's the plunge down the hill for both drivers, and I think for Bodefer, if he wants to make this move, it is all going to come down to Forrest Elbow in setting up that corner perfectly.
Yeah, getting the good exit, getting the draft down Conrad Straight, and ultimately making the move into the chase. That's where it has to happen. The body language of these two cars is telling me that they're both absolutely going for it. This is no team formation finish. On board now with John Bodefer in 2nd place. You can see the gap sitting at just under 0.3 of a second. Justin Ream weaving from the right to the left, trying to break the toe. And now in the second half of the Conrad Straight, that gap does start to come down. Is he going to get there? Will he make the move?
He's thinking about it. He's going to go for it down to the inside there. They avoid contact into the right-hander, and it's going to be Bodefer trying to go around the long way of the chase. That is going to be perfect defense from Justin Ream. A little bit of a grimace there from John Bodefer because he knows that his best opportunity has gone by the wayside. He's going to try to make it work, going too wide down into Murray's corner. Here they come. Later on the binders is Bodefer. Pinches down his teammate, maybe a little bit of contact. Who's it going to be at the line? It's Ream by 0.008 of a second.
The nail-biting finish and another move around the outside that almost worked for John Bodefer. If the line had been another 100 metres perhaps down the road, he might just have got there, but it is Justin Ream who hangs on. I had a feeling Bodefer was going to try and send it around the outside, and it very nearly worked.
Very nearly worked indeed, as we've got some more finishers coming across the line. Trepanier able to come home in P8. Brockway and Bergstrom finishing 9th and 10th. Yake not able to make any more gains on him, as here we see the BMW of Frankie Arvello coming across the line. Here is another one of the McLarens. That is Alessandro Torchio that we wait to come through the line right now. Carlos Villa behind him as they bring their way down out of the chase right now, trying to see what they are able to get done as they come down through that final corner. The number 73 taking a very, very good line. Torchio going to come out of the corner and finish in good fashion. Villa finishing there behind him as well. Now we have the McLaren here of Joel Pigurio as he's going to work his way through the chase and bring that car down to the line.
Yeah, one of the last cars then on the lead lap to come through to the flag in what's been a very high attrition rate in this race. Quite a few drivers, I think, will be grateful for that dropped score rule. That means they can pretend that round number 4 of the championship never happened. Those that got to the end of the race, though, well, it must feel almost like they've survived a 12 or 24-hour race here around the mountain. Certainly a bruising encounter, and quite a few of these cars limping home some way off the back of the pack are that far back because they're carrying damage from those earlier incidents.
Yeah, they certainly are. As the last drivers here cross over the line, that is Drew Lidke, the last driver to finish on the lead lap, and that is going to bring us over to our final finishing order here on RaceSpotTV. After 18 laps around the mountain, it was Justin Ream by 0.06 of a second, even smaller than I thought it was, up at the top of the charts over his teammate John Bodefer. And for the second time this season, Hydro Race Geodesic able to take a 1, 2, 3. Then it was Abner Acosta there and Michael Diaz in 4th and 5th for Precision Racing Esports. Then Nicholas Belmont, who fell down from a front row start. Simon Theria was in 7th place, followed by Trepanier in 8th, then Adam Brockway and Alec Bergstrom in P10. Fernando Yaquez was 11th, followed by Arnaud Genet, with Nicholas Riceputo and Frankie Arvello in 14th. 15th was Chris Hudson, followed by J.R. Williams, Alessandro Torchio, Carlos Villa, Joel Pigurio, and Bradley Beeman to round out your top 20. In 21st place, it was Drew Lidke, the last driver to finish on the lead lap. Then it was Alex May, the only driver to finish 1 lap down. We then ran into the many drivers that had some problems out here today. Costello, Ayers, Mannion, Marshall, Castillo, Romero, Young, Bachelard, Bonilla, David Van Roy, Jose Lockwood, Patrick Bachelard, and Marc-Andre Desjardins. And with that, that is going to bring us to an all-geodesic interview here. And first and foremost, it will be our victor, Justin Ream. And Justin, a nearly flawless race for you there. Really doing a great job. But talk me through that last lap. That last couple of corners looked like a little bit of a fun battle between you and John.
Yeah, it was getting pretty close there. The couple laps before the final lap, I was kind of sweating quite a bit because I had to fuel save. Like, I was just on the line, so I basically crossed the line and ran out of fuel. So I was lucky enough to stop him doing the crossover at the follow through, and then I just kind of glad I didn't bump into him going over the curb at the final corner. But yeah, it was a good battle.
It was a very good battle. And how much were you guys talking a little bit about fuel strategy over the course of that race? Because it looked like you were able to play that to perfection. Obviously, Miguel a little bit farther down in the order. He was able to jump up through the pit cycle, and you and John were really able to fly away up at the front of the field.
John was able to play the fuel strategy a lot better than I was. I tried saving enough fuel, but once we got down to like 5 laps before pitting, I was kind of like right on the borderline of making the extra lap, maybe not. So I kind of just decided to fully push and then see kind of what happened at the pit stop. And then, yeah, it kind of worked out for me. I think John put a little bit extra fuel in by accident, but it worked out, I guess, for me.
Yeah, it worked out well for you. And I got to ask you, next time we head to Fuji, I'd argue kind of a similar track to this, a very long straightaway followed by some fiddly bits. How do you think that's going to go, and can we expect another geodesic 1, 2, 3?
Well, I hope we can expect a geodesic 1, 2, 3. It'd be nice to keep up that keep up that win streak. But yeah, Fuji's a lot of fun. I really enjoy that track, and it's got lots of straights, so the McLaren should do well there.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. It's becoming one of my favorite races, or one of my favorite circuits to call. But Justin, who makes this possible? Who'd you like to thank for the victory here today?
Hydra Race, and then also you guys. You guys do a wonderful job on the broadcast.
Well, thank you so much, Justin. Congratulations once again.
Take care.
All right, that was Justin Ream, your victor here tonight. And now we, Andy, I believe you've been able to catch up with his teammate who finished a mere 0.006 of a second behind him, John Bodefer.
Yeah, absolutely. John joins us now in the broadcast booth. And John, second place, it could so easily have been the race win there. Talk us through your view of what was a sensational final lap.
Yeah, the last lap was a lot of fun. I probably got my best run through the drop and force elbow from the entire race. And then, like Justin said, I was trying to cross him over on the follow through, and that was definitely my best corner over him. Otherwise, he was probably fast everywhere else. So tried to do the over under, didn't work, and then tried to ride the outside and just got in the throttle a little too late.
We were riding on board with you as well, watching you as you were battling away with him on that final lap, and the intensity of that battle was written all over your face, not only because it was a really close fight around a really tough track, but you're battling your teammate and a driver you're likely to be fighting with for the championship over the rest of the season. So how important was it there for the team to make sure that that was a close but clean battle?
Yeah, I think we do enough practice with each other that we know how each other drive, and we made a couple mistakes there in the follow through in practice, and so we learned from those, and we're able to just battle tight and put on a good show.
Let's talk about the championship situation then, because that is your second win. You're the first double winner 2 weeks. Your second place, excuse me. Beg your pardon. So 4 different winners. Getting ahead of myself there. It was almost a win. But good points in the bag nonetheless. And how confident are you feeling heading into the midway point of the championship next week?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to Fuji. It's a fun track for Justin and I. We've had success there before, so in this car. So looking forward to it. It's a lot of fun with that track with no chicane. So yeah, we'll just do our best to put on a good show and get some good points.
Excellent stuff. Well, John Bodefer then second place in our 4th round of the championship. Thanks for joining us tonight, and congratulations on another solid night of racing.
Thanks, guys.
So John Bodefer then, I tried to give him the race win there. He tried to take the race win, but in the end came up just short, DJ.
Yes, he did. We're now able to catch up with his other teammate, Miguel Vigo. And Miguel, a great race there for you. Had to charge your way up a little bit. Not as easy as I think you would have liked it to be.
Yeah, I was pretty pissed off at that mistake I made in turn 1 there at the start of the race. That pretty much ruined everything for me because I just wanted to basically stick with the top 3 guys and just save some fuel and then jump my teammates there at the pit. I played the fuel game perfectly, but I caught up to them there at the last second. But if maybe we had one more lap or something like that, maybe it would have been a 3-way fight and it would have been more interesting. But just happy to salvage P3 just from that mistake, and hopefully looking forward to next week.
Well, talk to me about sort of recovering from a mistake like that. When you're put in that position, you're kind of on the back foot. How do you go about it? Do you try to get yourself into a little bit of a calm space and just focus on your corners in that? Or do you tend to go into a little bit more of an attacking mode? And what do you find works out best for you?
Actually, if you noticed, or if you guys noticed, I did try to go into kind of attack mode with the PRL cars. And then eventually I kind of just relaxed a little bit and just started saving a lot of fuel, because I noticed that Michael Diaz was doing the same thing, and then he just basically went in like 2 laps earlier than we did, which I thought was a mistake, but yeah, it just ended up working out.
Well, it ended up working out. Can we see another repeat? Obviously, we've heard both John and Justin talk about how they are really kind of looking forward to Fuji with the strength of the McLaren. Do you think the Mercedes is going to be able to do well there and you be able to keep up with them?
I don't know. I think it's going to be a tough track. That McLaren is extremely rapid, at Fuji, and you know, these two guys are at the top of their game right now. But we'll see what we can do, and hopefully maybe get another 1, 2, 3.
Well, we wish you all the luck in the world, Miguel. But as for today, who makes this possible? Who'd you like to thank?
I just want to thank the whole team, all the guys that put in the work, you know, to help us out, and you know, for practice and stuff like that. Hydro Race, our new sponsor for 2023, and you guys obviously for putting the show on, and the broadcast is always great. That's pretty much it.
All right. Well, Miguel, thank you so much, and we'll see you next time out in Fuji.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy.
All right, that was Miguel Vigo, your third place finisher here today, and that's about going to wrap up our coverage for tonight, but you heard us mention it. Both the GR86 and the GT4 Fixed Series find their way to Fuji International Speedway next time out, January 30th, so make sure to tune into RaceSpotTV to be able to watch both of those fantastic races. But on behalf of myself, DJ Clark, as well as my commentary partner here in the booth, Andy McEwen, and our director and producer behind the scenes, Hugo Luis, it's been an absolute pleasure to bring you the racing action here tonight. And until we see you on the track, thanks for watching.